Good morning, everybody. My name is Jamal Thomas, of course. Otherwise, I don't think you would be here. I'm glad that you could join me this morning. My volume, for some reason, went berserk. There we are. There we are. Yeah, I'm glad you guys can join me this morning. First, apologies for yesterday. Well, obviously, you can see this. Probably can even see the scar on my head. My hands are scarred. Um, when the radio station went down, I made moves. One of those moves was to sell the car, get rid of the place, and in which case I became essentially a fly on a leaf in the wind. Um, Yesterday I needed to go somewhere. Called the taxi, and as I was going outside to get the taxi was driving off. I go stepping off of a step, at least what I thought was a step, and it ended up being a cliff at the apartment that I'm staying at, the Airbnb. And it was a cliff. It wasn't a step. And I just planted into the cement. And I laid there. It's like, because, it takes a while for you to kind of, like, for the pain to just kind of settled. Um, and then when I got up, the cab driver was coming back. I got in the back of the cab, and he was pointing to my head, effectively saying, "You're bleeding, you're bleeding." So, came back into the house. Phone was smashed. So, no communication devices at all. I realized that WhatsApp, pretty much any communication device that you use, sends signals to your phone. And so I can hear my phone bling, bling, but the screen was so smashed you couldn't really do anything with it. I was screwed. I was screwed. Yesterday was a mess. Um, my mom and I are not in the same place. We're ways apart. She was nice enough to go to the local Verizon where I got the device in order to try to get me a new one. Fortunately, I had that device for so long, they were able to give me effectively another one for free. That is going to be shipped to me, but in the time being, I don't have it. Um, Sprained arm, banged up face. I contacted all of my guests. They were very gracious, and they decided to come back on today. I thank all of them for it. And so that is where we are. I've taken a bunch of pain meds, more pain meds, cold meds, and we are going to do the news. We have a full show for you today. It is a damn good show for you today. And despite the pain and everything else, damn it, we're going to do the news. Because there's so much of it, it piles up. I hate missing shows. I hate having to cancel on guests, and I hate having to cancel on you. You have my apologies. Um, Human frailty. Nevertheless, you can also say this is human um, resistance, human perseverance. Cast it however you want. I am here, and I thank you all for being here. And so, like I said, plenty to talk about today. When I say plenty to talk about, I mean plenty to talk about. It seems that Russia is pushing on all front lines. It seems that Trump has backed down, or at the very least flinched. I'll go with flinched. It's like somebody punch at you. He did that. He was looking at the bond markets, and apparently the bond markets plummeted. In fact, think of it like this. Under normal circumstances, when things are going wrong in an economic sense, bonds or treasuries are usually a safe haven because people consider the US government as an eternal thing. It will be here forever. We have $1 trillion military. That $1 trillion military is going to ensure the integrity and the security of this country. And with the security of this country also comes the security of markets, people, business, etc. That didn't happen this time. What ended up happening was people were selling treasuries and people weren't buying. So countries were like, I'm not touching it. And people were like, I'm not touching it. And when they saw that, they're like, oh my God, that is a disaster. That's a catastrophe. Because what it's signaling is that people was losing faith in the credibility of the US government as an entity as itself. Now, Richard Wolff is going to be on the show, so he's going to be able to have a conversation about it better than I can ever explain it. That is almost just a primer in what Donald Trump was looking at when he decided, all right, we will just drop tariffs to 10%. So the 60 over here and the 50 over there and the 20, 10% across the board, with the exception of China. With the exception of China. Now, China has effectively told Trump to F off, and not just F off, escalated as Trump escalated. So China initially, I forget the exact number where they took it to before, then they took it to 83%, because Trump took his to 100%, and then Trump took his 125%. So where it stands, and it's hard to keep up with it because it's moving quickly and Donald Trump is all over the place, Trump has 125% tariffs on China. China has 83% tariffs on Trump. But it's not just the tariffs. China has also decided to not have American movies. China's like the number 2 spot for movies. They're probably not going to buy treasuries, or at the very least cut back on the amount that they are purchasing, or they're selling them off. It's a list of things that China has done in addition to the tariffs. What this means for you is when you buy an iPhone, when you go to Walmart, when you buy anything that is from a Chinese company, and many of those things you buy, you probably don't even know are coming from China, the price is going to be through the roof. It's going to be through the roof. Even things like on Amazon. And there's reporting that many of the Amazon sellers that are Chinese are either going out of business or increasing their prices by like 50%, if not more, to compensate for the tariffs that Donald Trump is putting on. As I keep telling you, tariffs are a tax. In fact, this is being described as the largest tax cut on Americans in the history of this country. Now, when Trump was asked about this, and they were like, hey, what's going on with this? I mean, this is effectively inflation. Trump's response is, what do you think his response is? America First president who claims to care about Americans. What do you think Trump's response is? I give you 1 second because my guest is here to figure it out. This is Trump's response.
I think he'll win that seat.
Sir, when we get into late summer, early fall, and people are doing their back-to-school shopping, do you think they'll have inflation to worry about at that point?
I think there's not going to be. I don't think inflation's going to be a big deal, because if you look at me, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars. This is not new to me. I took in, during my 4 years, hundreds of billions of dollars from China. And we also took in a lot of money from other countries. But
inflation ain't that big of a deal. I don't think it's going to be a big deal at all. Largest tax cut in American history. And his response, I don't think it's going to be a big deal. Not a big deal at all. I need to bring in my guests because there is so much to talk about. We're joined with Arnaud Develay. He is an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. His latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and a Fracturing of the American Political Consensus. Arnaud, man, you have my deepest apologies for yesterday. Thank you for coming on today. How are you doing today? You doing okay?
Yes, thank you, Jamal. I'm doing fine. How are you doing? That's the question.
Banged up. My hair's all scratched up. My body hurts. Apparently, I landed somehow on my side. And it's like, at night, what sucks is as you're laying there, it just aches. It just aches all night. It just aches and throbs. But I'm okay. I'm here. I'm doing the news. So it's fine. You are the person I wanted to talk to because there's so much going on. Now, let's start here. There seems to be 2 tracks of negotiations that are taking place simultaneously. In one track, it's the war. And the other track, it's business relationship and reestablishing those relationships. And correct me if I'm wrong. If I'm saying anything that you think is off, tell me, I don't know what I'm talking about. This is from TASS. U.S.-Russia consultations kick off in Istanbul. Russia's delegation is led by Moscow's ambassador to Washington, Alexander Darchiev. Now, this was forecasted when Dmitry Krylev was here last week. And so we have continued those negotiations. Explain how this works. And do you think, let me ask you this way, what do you think the success is going to be of the negotiations on the track of resuming diplomatic relations while the war continues? And not just continues, Moscow seems to be on an offensive. I mean, Kiev is being pushed back effectively on all fronts. So how does this work that there are two tracks of negotiations? And do you think one track, at the very least, is going to be successful, even if the other track is not?
Well, to begin to understand or to answer your question, I guess one has to take into account the players themselves. I mean, it's unfathomable in this day and age to have the United States and the Russian Federation be at loggerhead to a point where there is absolutely no communication, even at the diplomatic level. And so for as far as we can say today, 3 years, this had been 3 years of
Yeah.
non-communication. So when you take into account the United States as the, still to this day, somewhat preeminent power, some would say on the wane, but there's still some water to go under the bridge before this is said.
Mhm.
And the Russian Federation, a country which has only a 17% debt to GDP ratio, 1/6 of the world landmass, sitting on a pile of natural resources, which at some point we can imagine, we can optimistically say, reasonably say, it will need to engage in joint ventures to help develop this huge supply, this huge swath of land east of the Ural Mountain. This makes no sense on the long term.
Mhm.
You can only explain it away as far as small-minded federal bureaucrats who somehow have tried to parlay their own personal, if not family, issues into U.S. foreign policy. This is what we've seen in as far as Western and more specifically U.S. foreign policy vis-a-vis Russia the last 10 years. So they gave it a shot, and it failed. It failed, and not only did it fail, but the boomerang effect has been of such magnitude that it has led to a complete retooling of U.S. foreign policy in Europe and on other matters. I guess we'll discuss it later on, bearing on commercial and trade issues. So what we're seeing right now is a long, which is inversely proportional to the complete absence of contact and relationship between the two countries. What we're seeing is a long, painstakingly slow but necessary process aimed at realigning a decent bilateral relationship. Like, for instance, today we just heard out of the, I guess, I don't know if it's still ongoing, the meeting in Istanbul, but
Right.
one of the first takeaway from those discussions was the resumption of direct flights between Moscow and Washington. Well, that's very significant. If anything, owing to the potential for business relationships to be resumed. You can't imagine a second heads of companies and CEOs having to, go do a big detour to go to Moscow in order to discuss joint ventures. That's completely, unfathomable.
Mhm.
But this is where we are right now, discussing minute issues, which all put together one after the other will, into this equation. I'm also adding all the retooling of diplomatic teams, in both countries. So we have the tools to resume now, stop talking about the substantive issue. It would seem completely surreal and not credible to begin talking about such an important file as the Ukraine file if there was not even the modicum of required mechanism to do so in a proper environment, should I say. So that's the way I kind of look at it as far as the two-track question that you asked. Also, there are confidence-building measures. We just learned today. I will be talking about it later on another program tonight. There was the announcement of another swap
Right.
between Russian and American prisoners. So it is what it is, but it's only the reflection again of a drastically misguided policy that has been unfortunately carried out the last 3 years. Some would say probably going back to 2014, but the last 3 years were really the apex of the deterioration of the bilateral relation. Not to mention all the intangibles, meaning, the loss of credibility, the loss of confidence. And so, how it is. I mean, trust takes a long time to build and it can be snapped overnight. So this is also a factor to take into account.
Mhm.
So also trying to, through this resumption of communication among experts, we saw also, I mean, some say that sports also plays a big role in diplomacy, as an incidental story to what we're talking about. A few days ago, the long-held record of the NHL amount of goals scored in a career,
Yep.
which was held by the great one, Wayne Gretzky, eventually was broken by a Russian player. If you look at the coverage that this received in the United States, it's also another indicator. President Trump even made an allusion to it. He didn't remember the name of the player, the hockey player, but he made a mention of it. So those are little signs, not unlike what we saw in the 1970s with the ping pong diplomacy involving the rapprochement between the US and China in an attempt to somehow counter Soviet hegemony or perceived hegemony at the time. But this is what it is. It's kind of a slight, at this point, it's still a slight change in the atmosphere, in temperature. And the idea, I guess, of this two-track, again, negotiation is allude to Ukraine whenever you can on very specific issues, specific point, i.e. the constant violation by Ukraine of the ceasefire bearing on the bombardment of energy facilities, but not make it too much of an issue that it would come and be a stumbling block to the resumption of the bilateral relation, which the world needs. It's actually, if we talk about public policy here, and the world is the public, it is good for the world that Russia and the US are able to discuss a whole range of issues. So
Now,
you have to understand it like this.
No, that's perfectly fine. Alexander McCurris had a hypothesis. And what he is postulating is that Trump is working with the Russians and working with them in a way where they're going around Europe. So for things like the Black Sea grain deal, or let's say the Black Sea Initiative, resumption or around sanctions, and in doing so, would effectively peel away elements of Europe. Like Maloney in Italy has already said, we need to align ourselves with the United States. We need to work with the US. And so, I think it was Fico, either Orban or Fico, pointed out there are other European leaders that are also talking to Putin. Many of the businesses want to get back into Russia, especially if we want to get their hands on Russian gas. And if the United States is normalizing diplomatic ties with Russia, it's going to put more pressure on Europe to effectively do the same, considering they're hurting without Russian fuel, Russian energy, and now a trade war. Give me your take on that. Do you think that's true? That for all intents and purposes, the business track, because you got to give Putin credit on this. The guy that he sent to the US was a business guy. And the business guy was speaking the language of business. And you can imagine Trump perked up. Oh, business. I can make money. I can make profit. And so he sent somebody who he knew would be very popular in regards to what he was going to say in the language that he was going to effectively speak. And then all of a sudden you have additional meetings taking place very next week. Like, do you think that this is putting pressure on Europe to, let's say, back down from some of their sanctions, or putting pressure on Europe in some level to normalize relationships, especially if the US is going to try to go around Europe on some of the sanctions that Europe has passed?
Well, it's an interesting way to actually put it. Up until the second election of Donald Trump, there was not even a sliver of light between Europe and the US.
Yeah.
As far as the economic policy, the worldview, the complete demonization process deployed against sovereign countries as such, or countries which, if they are capitalistic in nature, do not allow the sacrosanct market to overrule the verticality of power. What I mean by that is that in countries like China and Russian Federation, communism, to be sure, is a thing of the past. I mean, we talk about the Communist Party in China, but it's only communist by name. Like Deng Xiaoping used to say when confronted with someone who asked him this question, of ideological purity, replied, "What difference does it make whether the cat is black or white as long as it catches mice?" Which is a very Chinese way of putting it, but it's all about pragmatism. But the idea is that for those neoliberal to the core post-national elites in the West, all the way until the Trump administration was invested, again, there was this kind of unity of purpose, and it became a defining feature of how they related to the rest of the world, including the global South. Now, with the Trump administration, we have not just an alternance in power in Washington. I mean, whether it's a Democratic administration or a Republican administration, by and large, this was never a defining factor in what we're seeing now in the divide between Washington and Brussels. But Trump is not just any kind of Republican. He's someone who's actually is a heretic. Is it's like the old pharaoh Akhenaton, who decided to move the capital city from Memphis to I don't know, I don't remember the name of the city, but he moved it to from Memphis to Akhenopolis or something like this.
Yeah.
It didn't last long. I mean, his reign lasted just a few years, but he completely got rid of all the pantheons of gods and elevated the sun as the one and only deity. And at the time, I mean, those people in Memphis, they were like, "This is crazy,"
Yeah.
Right. So I guess this is kind of what we're seeing here.
Yeah.
Trump is the heretic pharaoh in the Western circles, and to the extent we're witnessing such resistance to his attempt to mend fences and bring somewhat the conflict in Ukraine to a close, is the fact that those people think he's not going to be around that long.
Mhm.
I mean, right now the tactic is to try to hang tough until the midterms, hoping that that is their fellow travelers in philosophy in the US, will be able to wrestle some of those institutional levers, such as Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives. Bearing in mind that as far as the judicial branch is concerned, they are pretty stocked. They have what it takes there. So that's where they stand right now. That's why they're putting on the brakes on every initiative, because they don't want to lose ground. They want to try to maintain the current arrangements as they are, with the idea that this guy won't be along, very long. We'll get rid of him. And by the time we wrestle control back from him of Congress, we'll initiate impeachment. We'll prevent him from basically focusing on substantive policies. So that's I think this explains a lot as to why Europe is definitely not playing along. They are probably being egged on by some of their U.S. federal travelers who have refocused their efforts in Brussels to try to provide a sense of go ahead, keep doing things as you were doing it. Don't deviate. We'll handle this guy. It's just like about 17 months left until and well, I mean, I'm sorry to say that might actually be the case if the tariff policy creates this. Yes, I mean, they're going to be running on maybe a recession by the time we get to the midterm, to November 2026. So
it might even be
stagflation.
Yeah, it might
there
even
you
be
go.
that bad.
So it's I'm somewhat sorry to say it, but it's a credible approach to short-term politics as far as considering Donald Trump as just a bump on the road to them.
Yeah, they might just wait him out, especially if he destroys his presidency with the tariff thing. I have to piggyback this on something else, because even though it's two tracks, I'm wondering if these two tracks are merging at a certain point. Now, the Telegraph has pointed out that Trump is going to effectively give Zelensky an ultimatum, effectively giving Putin everything he wants. It's like, you want this, with the exception of, you want the territories, they're yours. No NATO for Ukraine, etc. And that Zelensky either accepts it or Trump walks. Now, I want to piggyback that with this. So this story came out of Politico, where the U.S. is pulling out from a hub that was instrumental in providing arms for Ukraine. Now, apparently, the operations are supposedly handed over to Poland and some of the other countries. But it's pretty wild that this was something that the U.S. was doing for years. It's like 95% of the weapons that go to Ukraine go through this hub. And Trump is like, too expensive, got to pull out. And I'm wondering if the Telegraph might be right, that this is effectively foreshadowing Trump getting to the point of saying, all right, this is over. We need to go and attack China. But this is done. Europe, have at it, knowing full well that Europe can't do it.
Yes, I guess it's a encouraging sign, but let's not be too over optimistic here. I mean, the U.S. might have removed their physical presence there in terms of the manning operational staff, but the money still flows in, and the weapons are still flowing in.
Yeah.
So I guess it's the idea when you re-engage with the Russians from the U.S. viewpoint, I would surmise, is to try to at least do away with the sticking edges, so that you don't antagonize, or you don't somehow get found out as someone who's still pretty much, if we go by what the New York Times revealed a week ago, 1 degree of separation at war with the Russian Federation. I mean, they were on the ground, basically telling the Ukrainians, go take that hill, go take that trench, wait out in this area until this other group. And, I mean, it's not just providing intelligence from satellites here to launch those ATACMS missiles. So it is in a way, yes, somewhat of a slight change, qualitative change, but we're not at the level yet where we can say, the U.S. is washing their hands off it. Yeah. So some might say it could be, it's almost like what we've heard about the 10,000 U.S. troops being pulled out of Poland to be redeployed elsewhere. It's tit for tat. Trying to throw a bone to people, in Moscow. We need to somehow also look to the more hardcore section of their political spectrum and say, no, no, I mean, look, the US, it might be subtle at this point, but there's a change in the air.
Mhm.
But again, it's
Slight. It's minor.
very slight, very
Yeah.
slight, very slight. I mean, you're the president of the United States. You call the shots. I mean, this is what he keeps on saying. I'm the final authority here. What I say goes. So what prevents you from just turning off the spigot? I mean,
That's
if anything, do a moratorium on it, for 3 months. And then you'll see what, Europe can do on its own. But as long as you provide a flow of weapon, intelligence, and monies, you are sustaining this conflict.
mhm.
I mean, just assume your policy. That's what I don't understand. Now, I understand that he has people around him, very powerful actors, corporations, and military industrial complex who are still making a loot out of this whole thing, and he has to keep that in mind. But at some point, you gotta step in. I mean, it's your presidency, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it's just a matter of packaging it in a way that you can have your own minions go on cable news networks 24/7 and hammer out the points that you want the public to perceive. The public is behind you anyway.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
So,
I
so
it's
what's the catch here?
I oh man, I guess I looked at it as he has to work between the lines. And he has to, and look, I'm not defending Trump on this. I agree with you. Walk away hard. Like Steve Bannon said, just call it a day. Um, but I'm telling you, if he does, they're going to say this is not a deal. Not just not a deal. Ukraine was winning up until the point where Trump pulled out, even though they're clearly losing on all fronts. Like the spin on this would be tremendous. And so I don't know if in his mind it's like, I need to maneuver this in a way where I'm getting closer relationship with Russia. I'm going to put Zelensky in a pinch where I can effectively blame it on Zelensky. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I agree with your take though. Walk away. You're the president.
But right now, the problem is Zelensky. And so, to the extent you keep providing Zelensky the means to keep acting the way he does, which objectively is ungrateful and disrespectful, almost,
By the
entitled.
way, he's asking for more money. He's asking for more money.
Well, there you go.
He's
The
like,
guy, I mean, he has no incentive
yeah.
whatsoever.
He said he found two Chinese people, which is so racist, right? Because Russia is such a big country. They're going to be people who look Asian. He's like, we found two Chinese people, and now we need the U.S. to give us more money. Missing the fact that Trump is saying you already owe us $300 billion.
Well, actually, on this particular point, well, two things. The first thing is when he uploaded the clip, he forgot to change the label on it, so it showed Korean. But then we know there are no North Koreans on the line of contact. So he's actually using two false narratives, trying to upgrade the first one, which was the North Koreans are engaged in the conflict, with something to top it all off in order to get more monies, as you say, saying the Chinese are now there. So this whole thing is ridiculous on its face. I mean, Russia is about to record the mobilization of 160,000 conscription staff. I mean, they're not going to be their regular, conscripts.
Mhm.
They're not going to be automatically sent on the front line, but they will provide huge relief to those who are, for the time being, manning some of those installations,
Yeah.
and provide free a lot of personnel who might then be deployed, on the front line. So every commentators and observer of the conflict shares the consensus that we are looking at a major escalation on the front,
Yeah.
probably sometime in May, once the thawing is complete. So this actually might, I would say, delve into what you were saying as far as Trump telling or sending signals to Putin, do your thing, and take this guy out of his misery.
Yeah.
But if that's the case, so then yeah, I guess it would make sense. You can provide funding, but to the extent the Ukrainians don't know what to do because they're basically still 50% of it, that if they knew how to operate the different weapon system we've sent them in a coordinated way, we would have known about it for a long time now. That's not, that's not the case. And so it doesn't really matter whether I keep providing equipment and, on the ground, it will get burned. It will get burned by Russian missiles. But I don't know, to the extent he's talking about human lives. That's what I don't understand. I mean,
Yeah,
because
it
the
is
rounding
crazy.
up of Ukraine, it's crazy. It's I mean, we had the current chief of staff of Ukraine saying they need about 30,000 people every month.
What? Jesus.
So I mean, on this particular aspect alone, I mean, that makes no sense. I mean, especially to the extent that he's been claiming that a lot of hundreds of thousands of people are dying needlessly.
Look,
So he doesn't even need to come up with a new narrative. This is what he said during his campaign. The
I
human
don't
cost.
look. I don't think Donald Trump cares so much about human life. I mean, he was out here celebrating on Twitter about civilians being murdered in Yemen.
In
Israel is
Yemen,
going
yes,
on
I
a
saw
killing
that.
spree. He may say this stuff. I don't think he really care. I think Trump is amoral to the truth. He says whatever ever he has to
I,
say. I
I
rarely,
agree.
I don't care what comes out of his
But what
mouth.
I'm keeping in mind is that whatever he's planning to do, and however he plans to go about it, trying to not rile some of his donors and some of those interests who are always kind of in the shadow behind him. Um, if that does not work, to the sense that we don't have a somewhat final resolution, not only just an end of hostilities, but a final resolution of the conflict by the end of the current year, I would say, by January 2026, um, this is becoming
A
and if you
route.
add the tariff situation, yeah, this is becoming a liability, a political liability. It becomes his
Mhm.
own war.
Yeah.
No, don't lose sight of that. It's so yes, we have the two-track approach, but you cannot, just delusion yourself to think that the Ukraine file is becoming secondary. It is front and center as far as this term is concerned. I mean, it is the key. You have to take a sword and split that Gordian knot. I mean, that's the only way to do it. It's going to rile some people, but you just have to engage in perception management to sell it. But at some point, the longer this whole thing goes on, it's being micro sabotage at every step of the way. Even the Russians now are, I mean, not at the top level, you don't hear it, but some of the, still senior officials occasionally muse out, their feelings, saying, right now there's nothing really substantial on this particular file. We are not seeing any progress, substantive progress. We don't even know what their proposal would be. There's
Mhm.
no proposal of substance to negotiate. We
I
don't
was
know. It seems like they are tone deaf to our concerns.
just to interrupt real quick though, and I want to get over to another issue of Iran before I close it. If Putin really is seemingly going on an offensive, which it seems to be the case, I mean, the number of men, like you said, you were pointing out, they are pressing all across the front lines. Kursk is nearly over with at this point. They are literally in Sumy. If this is going to be an offensive and it's going to be a push, and Ukraine is already low manpower, I mean, this may be the crushing blow in a way where allows Trump to come in and force events. I'm not defending Trump on this. I agree with you. He should walk. I'm not, so don't misunderstand me on this. But these guys often have these kind of political machinations in their minds. And I don't know the conversation that Putin and Donald Trump had in actuality. I only know the readout of the conversation. For all I know, Trump is like, I don't care about this. What do you want? This is what I want. All right. We'll work this out. I have no idea. I have no idea.
No,
But
I don't think anybody knows. Nobody
yeah,
knows nothing. I mean, we know they had a 1.5 hour phone call. That's all we know.
Yeah,
but we do not really have specifics on what
that phone
was
call.
exchanged. No.
All right, I need to move on. I want to move on to another subject because I got to get your take on this. So right here, Russia says it won't have to defend Iran for a win, but then you get this article also. Russia warns against attacking Iran. It's illegal and it's unacceptable. Now, this article is in relation to the deal signed between, oh, where is it? Where is it? I thought I had it up. Okay. Basically, the ratification of the deal between Moscow and Tehran. What's interesting at the bottom of it, it's an agreement that deals with security, economics, etc., like pretty much everything across the board. And it points out, okay, well, Russia doesn't have to defend Tehran, but that's not really saying that they won't if Tehran is attacked, especially given the significance of Iran for Russian security, and for that matter, even for Chinese security. So, how far do you think Russia would go if Tehran is Iran is attacked? Because I guess there are two questions in this, right? What would that attack be? And also this notion of any kind of quote unquote negotiations that are taking place in Oman over the weekend. Okay, well, initially Iran said they're not going to have negotiations, or at the very least direct negotiations. But some of the reporting pointed out that, okay, they'll talk for a few hours, and if those talks go well, then they would have direct negotiations. Now, indirect, direct, I don't think that big difference between those two things, so fair enough. But I guess my interest is, I get the sense that what Donald Trump wants is to be able to get not just the nuclear program, but the ballistic missile program. Netanyahu, when he came out of the meeting, he came out and said something to the effect of the the Libyan option, which is explosive to anybody who knows what that means. You know, Gaddafi wants nukes. Gaddafi decides to give up those nukes. Gaddafi gets sodomized with a machete by a bunch of jihadists that we effectually was pushing in order to take over Libya. Libya becomes a basket case of a country where they're selling black people for $400, basically for cheaper than a car. And so for Netanyahu to say, yeah, I talked to Donald Trump, we agree that Iran is going to have to effectively go with the Libyan option of blowing up their stockpile. Now that is pretty astonishing. That is pretty astonishing. Considering Iran is a strategic ally, how far do you think Russia would go to defend it if indeed Donald Trump is not bluffing and actually attacks Iran?
Well, we have to look at the text of the strategic treaty that they signed and ratified. Was ratified a few days ago. As far as security guarantees are concerned, indeed, there is no mention of direct military intervention by Russia in order to help Iran were Iran be the subject of an aggression. Yes. This being said, there are mentions, explicit mention of all kind of equipments. So this could be, you know, anti-missile ballistic system. It could be a radar. It could be a whole range of things, which basically would make this endeavor to take out Iran's nuclear installation a complete, you know, suicidal venture. I mean, that's the idea, is to provide Russian tech on top of Iranian tech, which is not bad on its own. I mean, let's recall that in 2013, Iran actually bought S-300s from Russia. But since at the time there were negotiations, there was a lot of pressure in Moscow by American diplomats to put the brakes on this transaction. Iran went on and developed their own domestic version of the S-300, which is the Bavar 373, and it works very well. So we saw at the same time the pinpoint accuracy of Iran's ballistics a year ago during Operation True Promise 2, which basically did not even occasion the loss of one civilian, except for one Palestinian who, unfortunately, wrong place, wrong time. We
Yeah.
was received a debris of missile on himself, but otherwise it was a quite impressive display. So imagine if the Russians are providing them additional gears, which we don't know anything about, because obviously the treaty does not specify what kind of, but it says provide assistance, military assistance, maybe, or in terms of equipment, in terms of logistics, in terms. So that should be on its face enough. I don't think Iran needs the Russian army, and Russia has no interest in overstretching itself.
Right.
That's the bottom line. So, but yeah, you add to this the diplomatic cover, at the Security Council, and they can put people on the ground to build those nuclear plants, to provide nuclear know-how, so that the civil program is completely under Russian supervision, and that thereby there's no reason to worry.
By the way, that was also
Uh,
in the deal.
yeah,
Nuclear. That was
exactly.
the buzzword that I saw when I was
Yes.
reading through it, and it was like nuclear, nuclear energy for the civilian usage, etc.
So no, I don't think there's any reason for Russia to be militarily involved, directly involved. And there's Iran as the gears, and now with this treaty, this strategic treaty, they can avail themselves of a lot more gears, essentially. But the second point I want to make is going back to this idea that yes, the Libyan option would be the only one acceptable. Well, I think he was talking more to his domestic audience, because I get the feeling that this meeting in Washington, some people say it was actually a play, but I have the feeling it did not quite go as he expected it,
Mhm.
in terms of commitment. Because again, and we had that conversation last time, Trump is yes, he's a very cynical politician, but he's not irrational. He's not going to shoot himself in the foot on behalf of their proxy in the Middle East. Is
He is
especially if
initiating.
he
Well, but just be clear, he's initiating a trade war against the world. The dollar.
yeah, right.
Like,
Well, I mean, the trade issue, that's economics. I don't understand. I don't feel like he understands the ramification as far as economics. I think he convinced himself he can just turn a light switch on and it will produce X effect or Y effect. When in fact it doesn't work. Economics is anything but an exact science.
yeah.
But as far as boasting on a military level, it's one thing to be doing the boasting, and then you can sugarcoat the whole thing by saying, we had those discussions, they got my message, and everything is copacetic again. And you cannot blame me because I got, your security interest at heart.
Mhm.
Because make no mistake about it, the Iranians are not naive. They know very well that what the Israeli wants is not any of the three, aspect, whether it's the monitoring of the enriched uranium or the ballistic missile or the alleged support to ideologically linked militia in the region. What Tel Aviv wants is a regime change in Tehran.
Right.
Nothing short of that will do. So once this is the predicated premise, this is where everything stands on hinges on. Why would Iran start sitting down and negotiate when, as you rightly pointed out, I mean, look, this did not quite work out the way Colonel Gaddafi expected,
Right.
or Saddam Hussein, or Assad for that matter. I mean, they were still doing this shenanigan last week, a few days ago, saying that they're looking for those chemical installations in Syria. Those chemical installations were dismantled back in 2013.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes no sense. But we're dealing with people who basically are not trustworthy. What they want is they want to take you out. They want to take you out. The only person with whom this trend was bucked was with North Korea. So we had the usual back in 2017, the usual Trump boasting and this uncouth way of addressing a foreign head of state,
Rocking
trying
in.
to trying to mark his territory in a way like a pissing contest. But in the end, once the knowledgeable people in his own circles told him, well, there's only that much we can do with this guy. He's got the nukes. That's it. So for Iran, I mean, the equation is very simple. Uh, be legalistic about things in a way that you cannot be pointed out as you're trying at all costs to get the nukes. Rely on your allies, but whatever direction the negotiation heads into, make sure that push comes to shove, if somebody starts acting irrationally, you provide yourself with the ability to turn around in a second and get parity as far as strategic weapons.
One
That's
catch:
my take.
Israel is a wild card. Meaning, even if you think Trump is not suicidal, which I don't know that to be true, to be honest, and sometimes politicians can walk themselves in a corner with their language. You have 2 months. Okay, what happens if those 2 months come up and Iran says, F off? Then what? Okay, now you're forced either look bad in a credibility sense or act in some way. And that has nothing to do with Israel, who may say, we are going to attack Iran in order to drag the United States into the war. There was a report that came out that made the point of saying that the Biden administration thought Israel was going to go on a murder spree for a few weeks. And Netanyahu effectively expanded it out for over a year. And the Biden administration effectively went along for the ride. Why wouldn't that be Trump also? Trump has been completely obsequious to any and everything that Israel has wanted, even going so far as to say the ambulance and the paramedics who were murdered with their arms behind their back, it was Hamas's fault. Like, that's so outrageous, right? That is so insulting. Just tell me you don't care that it happened. Don't tell me. It's almost like
Sure.
they shot and buried themselves. Okay, dude, stop. But I'm saying, if you have a government that's that in the tank for Israel, if Israel attacks, Trump will go along with it. At least I think so. Correct me if I'm wrong. And this could be the last question, but I'm curious about your thoughts on this.
Well, we never know what goes on in the mind of some leaders, especially those like Netanyahu, who is politically in the corner in his own country. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. Israel is on the brink of civil war right now. Not over the fate of the Palestinians, but because the guy is basically taken over the whole government and personalized it for himself. He doesn't want to face the music in court for some of the corruption cases that have been opened against him. Out of 18 convocations, he only replied to 3 of them, and every time he's on the verge of running out of options and having to again answer to some of the allegations, he violates a ceasefire. So to be sure, not unlike Zelensky, Bibi Netanyahu has every incentive to open new fronts and escalate situations and violate ceasefires.
Exactly.
That's par for the course. At the same time, if we recall, a precedent was in 2007, 2008. That was the last time we were that close, from what I understand, to see. And at the time, Iran was not what Iran is today, mind you. There was Admiral Fallon was the chief of staff at the time, and he said, "There's no way we're going into Iran." At the time, we had Cheney was essentially running foreign policy in West Asia for the U.S. Not even Bush Jr. Dick Cheney, Darth Vader. So, and Dick Cheney was a complete neocon. I mean, all the way full tilt on board with this. 7 countries in 5 years.
Yeah.
In the end, that did not do it. That did not do it, because they ran those simulation game, and they realized that engaging the Iranians in an open conflict in the Persian Gulf alone, involving the 7th Fleet, would lead to 12 to 15 U.S. aircraft carriers sunk.
Wow.
And I'm talking just about yes, the Blues against the Reds, and every time the Blues lost. So imagine today. Now you have also all those U.S. allies in the region, all those Gulf monarchies. They don't want to get subjected to a rain of ballistic missiles from Iran. And Iran has been very clear. Anybody who somehow remotely provides logistics for an assault against us will pay the price. We won't even discriminate. So there's going to be a lot of people, if we get to that point again, there's going to be a lot of people probably on the inside in the military circles The only problem is this guy at who's SecDef, the
Except,
DoD. Yeah, this guy is a Christian fundamentalist nutcase. You have to, yeah. He's they chose him. They chose him because of that psychological profile. He's a crazy bastard.
yeah.
He reminds me actually of a guy 20 years ago who was identified. Forgot his name, but he was a general. He said his name was Jay Gardner, I think. Anyway, he
Okay.
was identified. He used to say, "My God is stronger than your God." He was one of those first expression, manifestation of Christian dispensation doctrine into the U.S. military. But now, at the very top of the department, we have someone who thinks like this, who puts tattoos on himself, harkening back to the Crusades. I mean,
Hmm.
the guy is a nutcase.
My God is stronger than
That's
your God.
something I would be more worried about.
I mean, he filled his administration with people like that, though. I mean, what is the guy, the one that ran for
Sure.
president?
Huckabee,
Huckabee. Thank you. Yeah,
the ambassador to Israel.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, he thinks
get it.
that Jesus is going to return once they do something in Israel. So these are the people that he filled his administration with. These people are pro-Zionist more than the people who live in Israel. Like, it's terrifying. And I guess my thing is,
Well, they're pro-Zionist only in as far as it serves their religious doctrine, which is basically to force the Jewish people to convert to Christianity. Because when you bring on, Armageddon, then the great rapture, blah, 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 then there's nuclear fire consumes everything, and then Christ reappears, and they have no choice but to abandon their false belief and convert and accept him as their savior. This is how those people think. So they don't care about the Zionists. The Zionists are a means to an end.
but see, that's my
What end?
point. These are the people who Donald Trump has filled his administration with, right? And it's whispering in his ear. And so it's like, okay, these people are lunatics. Like, they're like full-blown psychological
Yeah.
cases. And yet he's head of the DoD of $1 trillion, according to Trump, military
Well,
organization.
that's official now, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Arnaud, man, I've appreciated this conversation deeply. I really have. By the way, so you believe Trump is bluffing? Just to be clear.
He's a con man, so anything is possible from him. Yeah, and we didn't get the chance to talk about tariffs today, but our next conversation we can touch on it. I'm very pessimistic about this attempt to reindustrialize the U.S. through this tariff policy. We will get to explore why I think that, but the problem is what defines the man is uncertainty. And if you're a business owner and you have cost, you have to make sure that you think strategically as far as your business is concerned. You never know what this guy is going to say from one day to the next. So assuming that the plan is to bring back jobs and factories into the US, and you decide to do so, it's very expensive. You will have to pay to increase the wages, to be sure, because, I don't know where you are operating from at this point, but going back to the US, there's going to be an added volume in wage payments.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to do all this, and for all I know, 3 years down the road, this whole policy has been abandoned.
And
Then what?
And I'm glad you pointed that out. On Tuesday, I believe, Donald Trump says, on Monday, I'm sorry, he says, these tariffs are here to stay. They're never going to change. I'm not changing policy. On Tuesday, he backs away from the policy and drops all the tariffs down to 10% with the exception of China. Like, how do you plan for that, right? That's volatility on steroids. There's no way that you can plan around somebody who, as you point out, from day to day, it just changes. There's no way to know. And by the way, no tariffs on Russia. No tariffs on Russia.
Well, no, because it would be useless. There's no trade with Russia. Russia is completely impervious to all that. They're the complete autarkic state, self-sustained.
But
Maybe a lesson to be.
That's the other funny part. I think you put like
17%
tariffs on Israel.
Yeah, they'll find a way to create an exception. They always do for those allies of ours.
Arnaud, man, thank you for this conversation. I really appreciate it. And again, you have my apologies for tomorrow. For yesterday, I'm sorry. Thank you for this.
No problem.
You have a fantastic
My pleasure.
day. Arnaud Develay, he is an author, political analyst, and international lawyer specializing in international criminal law. his latest book, Foreign Entanglements, Biden, Ukraine, and a Fracturing of American Political Consensus. By the way, do you have another book, or do you have, where can people find you? Just so people will know. I always ask this question.
Yes. You can find me on Twitter or X now, Invictus at Invictus Lex. And you can find some of my publications on 21st Century Wire.
Yeah, I put it below the other video, and I'll find the link and put it under this one also, man. Thank you for this. I really appreciate it.
You bet.
You
Have a good one.
Be safe. All right. Arnaud, the man is fantastic. I do not know where Carl Shai is. Maybe he has blown me off for whatever particular reason. Let me send him a message to make sure. Let's see, can you do 8 a.m. EST? Sure, he says. And I said, thank you, man. Here's the link. And there's no Carl Shah. Yes, I am very. Look, my show is very important to me. And I understand that at least my working model of thought is that nobody really cares about anything that has to do with you. You're the one that cares about it. So you're the one who has to fight for it, advocate for it, push for it, and everything else. So I do feel some kind of way when people say, sure, 2 hours ago, and then just not show up. Just not show up. But whatever. We will keep this boat moving. One of the things, Jennifer Perelman, she's going to be on the show. She was a candidate at one point that ran for office. And she has been a really good friend of the show. I've been on her show a few times. Her show takes place very late at night. I wake up at like 5 a.m. for my show. So you can imagine it's very difficult for me to make that transition, but whatever. She's still fantastic about it. There were so many things that I wanted to hit with Carl, especially with the 128% tariff. So that sucks. I would say, going to this, Donald Trump climbs down. Donald Trump climbs down, he flinches. Now, the reason he flinches is super interesting. As I pointed out before, Trump at one point was like, these tariffs are here to stay. They're not going anywhere. But what ended up doing it was the bond market. Now, Trump came out, I believe this was yesterday, and in his Trumpian fashion, said this.
I think that Congress should take over in the history of our country, and don't let some of these politicians go around saying, because I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir. And then I'll see some rebel Republican, some guy that wants to grandstand, say, I think that Congress should take over negotiations. Let me tell you, you don't negotiate like I negotiate. In the history of.
What's wild about that? That every time he says that, I'll do anything, sir. I'll do anything. In my mind, what's coming up is I will, it. He doesn't say it though. He might as well say it because he's alluding to it when he said, please, sir, I'll do anything. I'll do anything. I'll even say it, Trump. Say it. Might as well say it. You've alluded to it in a way that you're saying it. And mind you, he's talking about world leaders, right? It's so over the top. It's so base in the way that he's putting his language on that. And yet, the same man who's pointing out, I'll do anything, sir, climbs down a day after saying these sanctions are here to stay. Trump, I think they use the term retreats after bond market catastrophe. To make it clear as to why, days of pressure from fellow Republicans, business executives, and even his closest friends hadn't appeared to move Trump at all. My policies will never change. They will be here forever, according to Trump. By Wednesday, however, It had become evident that the campaign to convince Trump to change course would not let up. It had become a plan after a sharp sell-off in U.S. government bond markets, usually a safe quarter for investors, that the economic ramifications of the president's strategy were potentially catastrophic and worse than his advisors had predicted. Now, when you come down to the bond market sell-off part, it freaked them out. Now, as I pointed out before, the reason it freaked them out is because if I have to trust in an individual, okay, maybe that trust wanes. That individual, could go through catastrophes. They could fall, hit their head, bang up their arm, damage their ribs, can't work, etc. But the U.S. government is different because the belief is we have $1 trillion military. We can knock down any government that we need to knock down. We can defend ourselves from pretty much alien invasion. We will be here. We are eternal. Now, whether it's true or not is secondary to the point. Eternity really only matters over the course of a human lifespan. So you only really need to know whether or not the U.S. government will be here over the course of your lifespan. What they were seeing, though, were that people were selling off treasuries. And in addition to selling off treasuries, nobody was buying them. And so this was the inverse of what typically takes place in cases of disaster, catastrophes, etc. So in this case, it was, oh my God, this is no longer a safe haven. And what does that mean, though, that it's not a safe haven? It means that the integrity of the U.S. government itself was being questioned by the bond market, meaning that was the symbolism associated with it. If you are selling off treasuries from the U.S. government and nobody's buying them, that means that is people actively, effectively questioning the integrity of the state. Trump was watching that, apparently, and in watching it, relented. He backed down. Right here, the administration's economic team spent Wednesday morning intensely focused on the bond sell-off that had intensified a day earlier and accelerated overnight, driving yields higher and in effect demonstrating the exact opposite of what would normally happen during such an unstable and volatile moment in the global economy. Watching an inverse play out, they accelerate after the unexpected weak demand at the first Treasury Department's auction to take place since Trump's announcement of his tariff regime led to growing alarm. The sharp selling of treasuries, coupled with the low demand for the sale of new U.S. Treasury debt, sparked further concerns that foreign countries were abstaining from buying U.S. Treasuries and selling the debt that they already had. Because bond revenue pays for the cost of government programs that tax revenue doesn't cover, worries abound that Trump's broader agenda was in jeopardy. That's the other part, right? It's not just, okay, well, people aren't buying our treasuries. It's, we need people to buy those in order to do some of the things that we need to do that tax revenue doesn't necessarily cover. Now, I know some MMTers are going to scream at me and say that the government can pay for whatever the government wants, and they will be right. In theory, a little bit less so in practice. And either way you look at it, in that case, it freaked them out. And it freaked them out to the point where, despite the fact that Donald Trump was standing there the day before, my policies will be eternal. Eternal, goddammit. The next thing, we are backing away from this. It's going to be 10% across the board from here on out, except China. F China. But China, the China one is weird. When Donald Trump initially first put sanctions on China, China was one of the main countries. In fact, it was the only country that was very boisterous and effectively saying, fine, then we will increase our tariffs. So Trump comes back and increases them, I think, to like 100%. China upstairs to 83%. Then Trump takes us to 125%. And so they've been having this battle of tariffs where one would escalate, the other would follow. One would escalate, the other would follow. and they just kept going up. Now, the Treasury Secretary, I believe Bennett is his name, Bill Benson. I think it's Benson. He comes out and says, it is unfortunate that China is doing this as opposed to negotiating. Think of the stones necessary for you to increase tariffs on a country to like 63% out of the blue. And when they respond, your response is, it's a shame that you've chosen to take this course. Are you serious? Are you being serious right now? What do you mean it's a shame they chose to take this course? They're in direct response. You swing at me, I punch you and knock you on your ass. It's unfortunate that you chose to punch me on and knock me on my ass after I took a swing at you and tried to knock you on yours. Are you serious? Look, China's only 3% of China's economy comes through the US. That's it. It can be repositioned. Now, some of the Chinese vendors and sellers will be hurt, but China is very clear. We are not backing down. This is not something. I just got a message. It's probably Carl. We are not backing down. This is not something that we're willing to do right here. As the world's largest global economy and consumer market, China would steadfastly pursue high-level opening up and remain committed to its chosen path of development and inject more certainty into the world economy with its own steadfast development in facing U.S. tariff bullying. Now, they have a way of talking that is very muted, even though what they're saying may actually be significant. Here's the other one. In responding to the question about the follow-up of Chinese Ministry of Commerce plans to implement support foreign trade enterprise in exploring domestic market, the MoFOCOM spokesperson said on Thursday that, quote, recently the U.S. has imposed sweeping tariffs on all of its trading partners, including China, under various pretexts. The actions have seriously undermined the legitimate rights and interests of the Chinese enterprises and dealt a major blow to the stability of the global economy. China strongly condemns and firmly opposes these measures. They're not backing down. They're not backing down. In another post, right here, here's another one. Wait, let's see, what is this? Oh, okay, that's somebody else. I'm talking about Ritter, actually. In another post, people from Amazon were pointing out that they are going to be damaged, Chinese vendors. And some of those vendors are either going to have to leave or increase prices to the tune of something like 50%. Now, think about what that means. If it's Chinese vendors just on Amazon, you're talking about Walmart, you may talk about Target, you may talk about other vendors online that are going to have to deal with those tariffs. And again, it's a tax. It's passed on to you. Now, whereas we get a lot of stuff from China, they get less so from us. It's a market of 1.3 or 1.4 billion people. Now, imagine soybeans in the United States, imagine wheat, corn, all of this other stuff. And we produce so much of it that we ourselves can't eat it all. But if you have a market of 1.5 billion people, you can imagine that the farmers are giddy being able to sell to all of those people. What happens when China says, we don't want your corn, we don't want your soybean, we don't want the stuff from you, we'll go to Brazil to get it? What happens to the farmers? And you can see this across the board. What happens when the American consumer goes into Walmart and the thing that was $3 is now $9? The Walkman that was $20 is now $60. The iPhone that you typically got that was whatever is now 3 times higher than what it was before. You can imagine that the American public is going to feel some kind of way when they realize that their life, for the most part, and the cost of it has gone up. That's what's happening here. What's interesting to me is that Trump, or at the very least his Treasury Secretary, was saying something to the effect of, why don't they just negotiate? Which means that the original purpose of it was to try to force them to the bargaining table. But again, in the way that you're doing it, you're trying to force them to the bargaining table from a position of dominance. China doesn't look at you as a dominant. They look at you as an equal. And so if you're trying to come at them in that way, A, they're going to see it as disrespectful. B, they're going to see it as you're trying to Bigfoot in a situation where you are not the Bigfoot. And C, they're probably not going to negotiate with you on those terms. It's exactly what I said for the European Union. When Ursula von der Leyen comes out immediately and says, hey, we're willing to negotiate, she missed the point that he is trying to do this from a position of strength by doing something that could potentially damage your economy. If you flinch, he's going to eat you alive. He may feel some kind of way about what China is doing, but I guarantee you he respects what China is doing in a way that he does not with Europe. In which case, he tells Europe, I want your firstborn. Ursula, I want your underwear. I like to sniff them at night. Yes, I'm being serious. I need your underwear also. I need your PS reparations. Meaning it continues to escalate over and over and over again the more that you give in to them, which is what China understood, hence China taking a hard-ass position on it with the notion that at some point they may come to some negotiations, but when they do come to negotiations, they're coming at it with both sides being at their maximalist position and neither given an inch in that maximalist position. Effectively, we are equals. You're not better than us. We're equals. We're not Europe. We're not one of your vassals. Equals. And you will treat us as such. Oh, it's fascinating. So fascinating. Just absolutely fascinating. Jennifer's going, what time is it? Okay, Jennifer's going to be on in about a couple of minutes, so I can't necessarily go into a full story. I will, damn it, I wanted to talk to Carl about that too. Bernie Sanders. Whatever I say about Sanders, deep in my heart, I love the guy. Hit me, call me names, say whatever you want. Is what it is. He was my political awakening. And when he opens his mouth, oftentimes he's saying something I like to hear. The problem is the meta of Sanders. Meaning, it's not the subject, it's the meta. It's the, what are you saying it for? What are you saying it for? Like, you know, if you pass a bill where everybody says, yes, we're going to increase the minimum wage, and then I'm like, well, wait a minute. You're not even in power. That's a safe vote. That's a vote that doesn't matter. Anybody can be a maximalist when what they're saying has no relevance at all. Hey, I'm calling to pay this bill. I just want you to know I have lost my job, though. Okay, so how are you paying the bill if you lost your job? I'm showing a commitment to do so. And then the moment I get my job, all right, want to go to Red Lobster? It's that. Not to mention all of those people that he is revving up. He's getting excited. What are you going to do with them? Are you really going to take them into a burning house? We're so excited. We're going to change the world. All right, that house that's on fire, you guys go into that. Okay, what value is that? And not just what value is it, it undermines the ultimate objective, because what it does is those people, it makes them impotent. All of these people with these big ideas, things that they want to change and everything else, and some of those ideas might be right, and you put them into a party that in no way believes those things. It's not beneficial. I'm saying that, yes, what he says, I typically like. When you go to the meta of it, it's not just pointless, it's counterproductive. This is Bernie. Okay, I guess it's not here yet. This is Bernie. Am I sharing this? Okay, good. I'm sharing it. All right. I'll see you then.
And when Trump is out of office and others gain power, I hope we do not forget the cowardice, not only of these law firms, but by the way, you got major universities like Harvard and Columbia. These are some of the great universities in the world. And yet, out of fear of losing their grants, and I understand that, they got a lot of money there, they are willing to change their curriculum to bow down before Trump. You add all of that together, the attack on law firms. You have Trump, for the first time in history, saying to a judge, oh, you ruled against me. I don't like the decision you rendered. We're going to impeach you. That's not America. What our Constitution is about is a separation of power, executive, judiciary, legislative, an independent judiciary. You don't threaten and intimidate judges because they rule against you. That is a movement toward authoritarianism. And I would hope very much that not only Democrats and independents, but my Republican colleagues, we can disagree on all the issues, but for God's sake, let us not become an authoritarian country where one guy assumes all of the power. That is not what people fought and died to create in this country.
If somebody gets
Look, I've said as much of myself that those institutions were cowards. You know, you're going after students who have the right to protest. The problem with that is that each side has the things, they're prize ponies. So Democrats, Joe Biden was coming up with the censorship regime, Nina Jankowicz, for example, where they were effectively having a ministry of truth on issues that they didn't particularly like. Republicans get in after saying, we're the party who's against censorship, and then immediately start putting the fists down on anybody that had anything to say that was critical of the US government, or for that matter, against Israel. I want to bring in my guest. She is, there she goes. I was letting you get straight before I put you in.
I had to deal with the air conditioning.
Oh no, you're perfectly fine. How you doing this morning? You doing okay?
Good. Yeah. How are you?
I am making it.
Oh,
I'm startup,
God.
but I'm okay. I'm in pain, but I'm
Oh,
here. I'm doing the news. It's okay.
I
found
do you get health care there?
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'll heal. But I want to bring you in, right? Jen Perelman. She's an attorney, activist, and two-time Grassroots congressional candidate. Jen hosts Generational Change podcast on YouTube with the mission to, quote, transform politics into service, unquote. Her podcast hosts a wide variety of guests covering a range of political and policy topics with a nonpartisan lens and a commitment to justice for the least of these. Now, I would say there is no such thing as a nonpartisan lens. And you can correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay, well,
enough.
okay. How about it's not a partisan lens, but it's definitely got political biases, right? Like, so, right. So there are times when I'll agree with people in either party if they're doing what I consider to be the right thing.
Agreed. And I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I try to be the same way.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Malik was my co-host on Fault Lines. Malik is a right winger, and him and I used to have all of these different conversations, right? And I think at some point Malik realized, oh, he's not partisan. Like if it's something that he agrees with, he'll just say he agrees. If
Yes.
it's something he disagrees, he'll just say he disagrees. And it made him a better person. At least I think so, because it means that from his point of view, I don't have to be this hardcore Republican when I talk to him. Yeah, I'm going to have Republican biases, but I'm not that way. When Malik got on CNN, all bets were off. All bets were off.
Well,
My
because
mom-
that's where the money is. The money is in playing into tribalism. That's where the
Yes.
clicks are. That's where the followers are. So, I mean, I'm really consistently anti-label, not in a way that is like bougie, but like in a way that I really feel like it's very divisive. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
first of all, they don't really mean anything. I've met people that tell me, oh, they're real conservative. And we'll have a conversation. And throughout that conversation, we'll agree on so many things. And I know I'm not conservative.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? Like people are very quick to join labels, or they belong to the party their parents belong to, never really thought much about it, never really paid much attention. You know, so I don't know. I think we need to, like, I don't like isms.
Yeah. I remember this one guy sent me a YouTube email, and he says, man, I joined your channel just to be a troll. He said, just to be a troll.
Right.
And he said, I realized after a year that I've been watching you for a year. And he says, I agree with like 70% of what you say, but I am a hardcore conservative. And I'm like, maybe you're not.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
maybe
Maybe you're not.
right? Like if you agree with 70% of what I'm saying, and I'm talking about like government controlling energy sections, is increased healthcare, education, et cetera, maybe you're not.
Maybe you're progressive.
Maybe right, maybe you, but he would never say.
No.
He would never like.
That's
it's
why,
like
because they're so
radioactive.
tied. They're so tied to their labels.
Yeah,
They're so fixated on it, and that's why I'm not an ism,
yeah. One of the things that I am super interested in, and I want to get your take, is the hands-off protests. Now, these protests were massive. Now, some people in Russian media were like, "This is a color revolution," and it's like, "Shut up." Just shut up.
It was organized by libs. There is no revolution happening there.
Well, right. So this,
It was.
I mean,
You
protests
said
were
it was Boston.
huge,
It was not
and they
Boston.
were in
There,
all sorts
it
of
was an
cities all
unrelated
across the
protest.
United
But what
States.
you are looking at right
Now, let's be clear. This is AstroTurf. This is AstroTurf. These people didn't just get out of bed in the morning and say, you know what? I think I'm just going to organically go and, scream at the president. No, it was organized by, let's say, like various groups, MoveOn.org, many of which are Democratic linked.
Yeah.
They were holding signs up that was like hands off NATO, which is just astonishing, like basically pro-war signs, hands off Zelensky, hands off this, hands off that.
That's right. Those are not our people.
Right. Now, there would be people say hands off Social Security, et cetera. But these people were effectively, this was organized. It wasn't like organic.
What does that tell you?
Well, the Democrats are trying to find a way to push back against Trump using Trump's excesses as a way to do it, which is what they should do, I suppose. But that doesn't do anything for me.
Well, that's what it proves to me. What it proves to me is that they're capable of doing something if they wanted to. So all of this shows to me. So they had what, like 1 million people, they said overall. Like there was
massive. Yeah.
Right. So in other words, the libs are completely capable of making a stand if they want to. So let's note that, note that in your head. Now, there are some other organizations that jumped on that, which I appreciate. You had, your Palestine, you other anti-war, the people that are our people that took advantage of those too. And great. But the majority of, at least, I think it was very location dependent, because down here in South Florida, it was all old white people with hands off Social Security and just anti-Trump, anti-Musk. Yeah. I was one of 2 people there that was representing hands off Gaza. You know what I mean?
Really?
Right. Oh, there was and that's very location dependent though. But this is in, Hollywood, Florida. So it's pretty tribe.
Now, I've heard some people say that they went and they weren't allowed to speak on the issue of Gaza.
Yeah.
They were being iced out.
I walked around in this, and throughout a whole bunch of people that I know are probably Zionists. They weren't there for that reason. They were there anti-Trump, anti-Musk, and not the rabid running around with Israeli flag, but people that were raised like me. Okay. And I got the stink eye from I don't care, but nobody had the balls to open their mouth and say anything. So I walked through like the whole circle of anti-Trump, anti-Musk people, just wearing my keffiyeh and my Jews for Palestine shirt, which I'm sure really pleased them all. and I found one other person. And I know they hate it. But they were there really just for their, when the white people are out like that, the older white people, really what's happened is they're looking out for their own interest, right? So it's a Social Security thing. It's the taxes. It's all of the things that, oh my God, this could hurt us. So that's when they show up. But the point is, it shows that they can if they give a shit.
That is the catch, right? And, I was curious whether they would for Social Security, because that's usually a third rail. You have the world's richest man going after some of the poorest people and the most needy in this country. And I kept saying, that man is an albatross. Like Donald Trump is running around with him like this, like a little gimp or something. It's like, well, you got an albatross. Like he's not a positive indicator or positive factor for Donald Trump. He's awkward. For one, he's the world's richest man. And the things that he's effectively doing, this idea of, oh, I'm just getting waste, fraud, and abuse. Dude, they're trying to get like $800 billion out of Medicaid. And they are dummying the numbers up to try to find a way to give themselves higher tax cuts. And I'll go further. The tariffs that Donald Trump is talking about, oh, we're going to get $1 trillion in tariffs. What do you think they're getting the money for? Tax cuts. It's not for us. It's not like he's going to say, all right, I'm now writing a check to America. It's not that. It's now we can have tax cuts. And you are, when you get your $3, you're going to be very happy about it. It's that.
Yeah.
But these guys are going to get billions and millions from those tax cuts while they gut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Department of Education, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. But isn't it glorious? It's like we're in the most mask off moment that you could ever anticipate. And I've said this before, as much as I think Donald Trump is disgusting, I really do. Like, I've never liked him, but he's not the problem. Actually, he, in my mind, is the best representation I can think of what we are in the world. Can you think of somebody that better represents the United States in the world than that buffoon? Because I think that that's who we are to the world. And so why not own it? And I actually think that the reason people hate him as much as they hate him is Psych 101. It's like looking in a mirror. And even though he is loud and brash and gross and represents like the worst of us, he's us. Make no mistake, he's us. So it's like, I think that really freaks people out. Now, me, I'm just enjoying the show because we need to hit rock bottom for enough of these people to give a shit and get in the streets. So every one of these cuts, every one of these veterans that is lost their job, these are all just more Luigi Mangiones. So just keep it up, man. And the thing about Elon Musk is I'm waiting for him to be Mangioned. That's what I'm waiting for.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Because nobody is untouchable. And these people are going around at this point, mask off, bragging about how this guy who's not even from our country, the richest man in the world, and he's sitting there digging through our purse. Like, that's pissing off the people on the right. That's pissing off the red people. And this is the thing. Trump doesn't ever give a shit about pissing off the blue people. He doesn't care. He lives for that. In fact, the blue people are Mick resistance anyway. Nobody cares about the blue people. Yeah. But now he's pissing off the red people and they're armed. So this is where the revolution comes from. I have said it. Trump facilitates the revolution and I'm here for it because all of these things were inevitable. Just with Kamala, it would have been like a slow escalator descent. With Trump, it's like a free fall into Capitol hell. But that's where this is going. And it was happening regardless.
Jen,
so that's
heart.
I'm off the end at this point. You can see.
You're speaking to my heart. I've had this conversation with my mom also. And I think I sounded a lot like you.
Good. That's what people need to understand.
It sounds brutal, but
yes,
he is the representation of America. Oh. I mean, like for example, when Joe Biden is like, yeah, if Russia goes in, we're going to blow up the pipeline. And the German chancellor was standing right there, and he's effectively saying, we're going to have a mass act of terrorism on your pipeline, and you are just going to sit here and not say anything about it. Yeah. Okay, well, Trump will say something very similar, even though he may be more brash about it. Or we're going to take out the Palestinians, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, well, that was Joe Biden's policy also. Right. Joe Biden was just trying to be more quiet about it as he was trying to do it. Like this brashness, you're vassals. And I'm going to show you how much you're vassals by putting a tariff on all of you, despite the fact that you're supposed to be allies of ours. Okay, that's brash, right? And I guess my feeling is I wanted the Democratic Party smashed. I wanted them smashed to bits, to smithereens.
They are.
And they are. Donald Trump has got to do it. However, the excesses of Donald Trump allows them to stand there and just point, hey, he's going after Social Security, put me back in. Hey, he's going after Medicare, put me back in.
It's not going to work.
Well, in doing so, they have no substance. Nothing has changed.
No.
They're still this worthless, burning house that they were before. But now they have this bonus of, he's grotesque, put me back in. Now the catch becomes, as Garland pointed out, the polling for both were going down simultaneously, which is wild. I, I guess people, when they go vote, regardless of what they say, end up having this esoteric other, as I call it. I would vote for this person, but what is this other person that I don't know going to do? And I don't want to waste my vote. So even though I don't like either, I'll vote for this guy or this woman. And it's like, oh, this sucks. I wanted them smashed to smithereens where there may be a moment of recognition, a moment like 3 a.m. between them and their God. And
Oh, you're more generous than me. I just like the first part. I don't care if they have a moment. I care if their moment's out the door. And they have been smashed to smithereens. The only thing is, it's not apparent yet. So, you know, like when you crack a windshield and it's just cracked and it's just waiting to completely one hit and it'll completely fall apart. That's where the Democrats are right now. They are smashed. They are losing numbers. They are desperate. When you, like, I look at things like these marches, these, you know, hands-off marches. That's just part of Democratic strategy to keep people in this limbo where there's nowhere else to go. Just like Bernie and AOC on their anti-oligarchy tour. What are they doing? What is your message? The same thing as Gavin Newsom having his little podcast and going on with Charlie Kirk and videos of them like they're fighters. All of this shit is Democrats trying to rebrand themselves, and it's not going to work. Now, I will like concede that Donald Trump could be way down. He could be so down in the polls. I don't care how far down he is in the polls. We are done in this country seeing a back and forth like it's a 50-50. Like every 2 years they're in charge. Every 2 years they're in charge. It might trickle a little here and there. I do not think you're going to see another Democratic president in this country because no matter how pissed off people are at the Republicans, the Democrats are feckless and everyone knows it. And so even though they might not be Republican, they're not going with those guys either. And I think those days are over. They're not going to be able to fundraise on women's rights anymore. They're not going to be able to it's over for them. And I couldn't be more pleased.
The party is trash. I mean, the brand is just trash.
Exactly.
And what's wild about it, they don't seem to get the message. Like they don't seem to know it. Like
they don't care. Why do they care?
I would describe them as a cult that raises money.
They are.
As opposed to something that actively tries to get something done.
Well, it's a slush fund. The Democratic Party is a slush fund for what I call the WCCC, which is white collar campaign carnies. The consultant class, which is infinitely worse on the Democratic side and the Republican side. And these campaigns on the Democratic side, even when they know they're going to lose, they solely exist to pay the WCCC. So Kamala went through what? How many?
What is it? $1 billion?
Okay.
$1.5 billion.
Okay.
And
so I don't know.
Owing money.
Do people know that $500 million was spent on staffing for a campaign that was like 100 and something days? So I want people to understand. And by the way, I will tell you this from personal experience. A chunk of those people know they're going to lose. They don't even care one way or the other. They're in it for the job. And as long as they get paid, the charade continues. And that is what the Democratic Party is. The Democratic Party exists to fund its own people, its own leadership class, and to fund its friends in the WCCC. They don't care if they win. It doesn't matter to them. They're not going to get it because they know it. They just don't care. So that's why, to me, they need to go away because there is no there. At least with Republicans, they have a mission.
They do. It's grotesque, but they
do.
They have things that they want to accomplish. And that's the wild part, right? That is the point of political parties. Like, as I tell people, it's like, if there was a war, you would have Democratic side, Republican side fighting it out. That's the way it's set. And this kind of political parties are these low-level militaries. Well, all militaries are there to get stuff done. They have very specific objectives that they want to accomplish. Weirdly enough, they don't. Republicans do. And so it's like when they're pursuing their objectives, they are pursuing their objectives. We want to destroy Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. That's what we want to do. We don't like it. We don't need it. Many of the people who back us are rich. They don't care. So we want to get rid of it. We want to destroy the Department of Education. That's what we want to do. We don't care about it. We don't believe in the way the government operates. We do believe in a military. Like, Those are very clear objectives that
Yeah.
they pursue, relentlessly pursue. We don't want abortions. So yeah, we want to try to stack the court in a way where we can prevent the abortion thing. And by the way, they've been accomplishing those objectives.
Why? How come it's been so easy? And let's go back to how long they've been working on this. They've been working on this through 2 8-term Democratic presidential administrations that had supermajorities.
Yep.
And this agenda has been ongoing throughout all of it. All of it. So again, people wake up. The Democrats and Republicans is a facade. It's a facade. It's political theater designed to keep us all just fighting, and it's a class war. Like I don't, it's so obvious to me, which is why it's like I'm almost just sitting here and watching it with popcorn. And the longer it takes people to figure it out is sort of like the race against time.
But they haven't, like, I've seen some people who voted for Trump and they'd be like, but I thought he was going to do so-and-so. And it's like, why did you think that?
But good,
Like,
now
the
they
man-
woke up. But right, is that one more woken up person?
I don't know. I mean, because they're going to turn around and then vote in some other way, as if that vote is, meaning whether you vote Democrat or Republican, you're probably not going to get what you want. And the Princeton study that
So you're
pointed out,
definite, unless you're in the top 1%, 0.01%, you're not getting what you want. So
exactly. But the American public doesn't seem to see it. And I keep thinking to myself, where's the floor? Like, where's the bottom where they like, okay, this is, because from my point of view, it's mechanical. I agree with you on this, actually, that things fall until they get to a point where there's nowhere else to go. At which point people get enraged and they start moving. But that's a mechanical process. It's not like, people just wake up. People have creature comforts. There's a video game, there's an Xbox. They may have sex with somebody. They may go to, store with meaning there's always something for them to occupy themselves. And as Ted Rawl pointed out, which was depressing to hear, maybe they don't even think they deserve that stuff. So Social Security is an entitlement. Medicare is an entitlement. It's something that the government is giving you, in which case they think, well, I don't want welfare. It's like, dude, your state, meaning you as a country, come together and can make a decision on what you want to provide because it's in the well-being of everybody to have it. But in their minds, well, that's somehow a given. You're giving me something. It's a giveaway. It's frustrating because
but that's years of brainwashing, gaslighting, and propaganda at work to create, like, we're like battered spouses in this country. You know what I mean? Like we really we have no idea, like that there's a better life out there, that we're entitled to something better. We clearly have very low self-esteem because we allow our employees to walk all over us and treat us like crap. So we've got some psych issues in this country. And I mean, everybody just collectively, not mental health issues, right? Like, we really don't believe that not only are we entitled to those things, but yes, we can afford them. And that's what's so frustrating, is that we have been beaten down and convinced over generations, first of all, that the economic situation is a pie. So if we give X amount of money to this, then there's not enough money for that, and that your tax dollars are what pay for things. No, not how it works. Tax dollars pay for nothing. When you pay taxes, that money goes into the ether. It goes poof, gone, like that, like deleting something on a calculator. It doesn't exist. And people need to understand these fundamental things. People think that it's our tax dollars. Please stop saying that. Please stop saying that. It's not. Our tax dollars do nothing federally. State, obviously they do. But, it's like, we need to understand we're entitled to stuff because we are a collective civilization that has decided to come together to have things. Those are the things. And it's very frustrating. And people do see it as like somehow they don't deserve it. Because we've been told that unless you're working 100 hours a week, busting your ass at 3 jobs, you don't deserve to survive. And this is, again, consistent brainwashing. Like, AI should be coming in so that we don't have to work as much, right? Like that, people should be able to be lying in a hammock for more hours a day and still being comfortable to exist because of AI. Like
don't
that's the thing.
I
Yeah.
don't think they realize that the entire point of technology is to make life easier. Like, I don't want a person with all the capabilities of a human being dropping French fries. I just don't. Right? If there's a machine that can do it, let a machine do
Of
it. That's
course.
the
Right.
entire point of the technology.
Hmm.
But it's screwed up because the value of that gets ferreted up to the top 1% and they just get rid of the worker. As opposed to, it's super frustrating just in the way that our society is arranged. And I remember I was talking to somebody and they were like, capitalism is going to lead to, this utopian thing. I was like, it is not. It's not even in our minds for it to do that. I am super interested what happens when um, cars become driverless, when trucks and truck drivers, taxis, Ubers, none of these people need to do their job because they have a machine that can effectively do it. You go to the checkout counter, it automatically takes your card. So again, you don't even need people working in that, maybe a security guard here or there. Like, all of these people lose their jobs. Then what? Like, yeah, you could say, okay, people can learn the code. Shut up.
Yeah, I'm so
Like,
tired
shut
of
up.
hearing about that. That's so
Yeah,
stupid. Enough already with that.
right. To your point, technology should be a liberation,
Hmm.
but it's not that way because it's usually owned by a 1% that uses it to maximize their cash to as much as possible while we either lose that job or get marginalized in that job. Letnick, the goofball that
Oh,
Donald Trump have running around
oh
talking
my
about, Europe doesn't take our
God, that
chickens,
man.
our big, beautiful cows. They don't take our cows. That guy, he points out, he says, well, we're going to have robots come back to the US and do the jobs. And it's like, so you believe that a company who, let's say in China, that can make 1,000, 2,000 t-shirts an hour, that you are going to grow a business in America, you're going to pay for the robots, pay for the factories, pay for all of that stuff. That way you don't have to pay an American worker, because what you know is that there is no way you can hit the price point that they're hitting there with the things that they're effectively doing. And so you decide somehow, magically, a robot is going to appear to do that job. Like some of this stuff is just so outlandish, right? But he's making that point, though. We need to get rid of American workers and some of these faculties because they earn too much in order for us to be competitive with the rest of the world. Or Americans would just have to pay higher wages. I mean, pay more for the same items that they maybe get abroad. It's amazing.
Yeah, this is also the same man, I believe, that said how his mother-in-law wouldn't notice if her Social Security check didn't come. Was that him? Was that the man that
Probably.
was sitting
That
there
sounds like him.
and
That
saying
sounds
that
like him.
only fraudsters call and complain about stuff like that? Like, and he's like, my mother-in-law wouldn't care. I'm like, yeah, neither would mine. She's friggin' loaded. She wouldn't even notice. You're right. There are a few of those people, but how about the people that live on their Social Security? These
My mom
again,
would notice.
yeah,
Everybody who I know would notice.
it's same, right? Like that's just the most obtuse thing, but it really goes to show you how in a bubble these people are. And it's going to come to that. I'm telling you, I call it Mangione monetary theory. And I am telling you, the natives are getting restless. And the more of these people that they keep putting up on the screen, flapping their mouths as oblivious as possible while people are suffering and not getting health care and losing their homes and losing their look, man. I'm unarmed personally. I'm not armed. So, I am of no threat to these people. But I got to tell you, the more I see people with nothing left to lose, because that's all it takes, right?
Yeah.
Everybody is just one step away from being like nothing left to lose. And when you're nothing left to lose and you're in a country that has more weapons than people, the fact that you don't anticipate mass violence is fascinating to me. Like that's always what fascinates me the most. And now again, they're pissing off the red people. See, if you're pissing off the blue people, it's not necessarily, you don't have to necessarily concern, because the blue people can't even change their own tires. But are you pissing off the red people? The red people are going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
So this is where it's getting to now. And I'm here for it.
The natives are getting restless. I feel you. Jen, I loved everything that has come out of your mouth today. I swear to God, you're speaking to my soul.
Because I
Jen,
have no fucks to give anymore, Jamarl. I'm not a candidate. I don't care. And it's like, it's glorious.
I say it's glorious. Jen Perelman. She is an attorney, activist, and two-time Grassroots congressional candidate. Jen hosts the Generational Change podcast on YouTube with a mission to transforming politics into service. Her podcast hosts a wide variety of guests covering a range of political and policy topics from a nonpartisan lens and commitment to justice for, quote, the least of these. She is just on fire.
I'm in rare form, man. I'm telling you, man.
You're fantastic. Where can people find you, though? I mean, I want people to be able to look
Yeah.
at. We have a great crowd today, and I want that crowd to be able to find you.
So guys, my YouTube show is Generational Change. It's with a J for Jen. And yeah, we're on all the social media. You know, it's not me. It's my business partner that does social media because the people are too mean. And he tells me when I get in particularly horrid threats or, you know, when I get called horrible things, whatever. Or my Zios come after me because they hate me, you know.
Yeah.
The usual. But yeah, I'm just, and we're actually contemplating, I really want to change our tagline because I'm over politics. Like at this point, I call us Red Pills and Revolution.
Red Pills Revolution. I hear you.
You know that I got to speak after, this is not a brag. It was horrifying. I was in a panel meeting for Butch Ware, like a fundraiser, virtual fundraiser. Yeah, it was way fun. And I was getting ready to do my talk. I forget, I was going after some mayoral candidate, some nice guy, whatever. And then who joins the party is Fred Hampton Jr.
No way.
Oh, yes. And then because he joined, he spoke, which of course, and so then I had to follow him.
Oh, so you had to be on fire.
That's what I'm saying.
You had to be spitting fire after that.
I'm saying. So it's like, I know. I was like on a revolutionary panel. It was like the coolest thing ever.
Jen, you are always welcome here. Thank you for this.
Same to you. And if you ever, let me know if you ever want to come on. You know, the invitation is always open. Like if you want to promote or discuss or whatever.
I have no issue coming on. Let's talk about it after.
Okay.
I have no issue coming on. Give me maybe a couple of weeks.
Oh, no worries, dude. Get your shit together over there. We're all good. I'm not going anywhere for a while.
Badass. You have a good one. Be safe,
You
okay?
too. Thanks, Jamarlt.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Jen, on fire today. Let me bring in my man, Michael Maloof. Michael Maloof, he is a former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author and regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience, and he is a damn good friend of this show. Michael, man, welcome to the show. How you doing today? You doing okay?
I'm doing great. I hope you are as well.
I am making it. I am making it.
That's at least you're here.
Yeah, a bit of pain, but
Okay.
I am muscling through all of it. It's not a
That's all you can do.
I'm not going to complain. You are the man I wanted to talk to today because there's a lot of stuff that is effectively taking place. You have tariff wars that have dramatically expanded between China and Russia. You have Trump sending apparently an envoy, meeting with his Russian counterpart in Saudi Arabia. No, Turkey, actually. I want to get your take on that before I start on anything else. It seems that there are multiple tracks of negotiations, and it may not even be multiple tracks. It may just be a fork that end up merging back together. Kirillov, I think it was Dmitry Kirillov, eventually came to the United States last week. Those talks apparently went relatively well, or at the very least well enough for them to have additional talks in Turkey. What do you think this means? I mean, because the war is still continuing. Russia seems to be planning an offensive, if not have already started one. And yet you still have, okay, we're releasing, let's say, some of the sanctions. We are allowing direct flights now from Russia to the United States, meaning they're making diplomatic overtures between each other in a way that we didn't see for years, going back all the way even to the Obama administration. What do you make of it? Is it small? Do you find it to be significant? Give me a
It's very. I think it's very significant. It's a whole shift in the geostrategic paradigm from previous years. I think Trump's goal is to do an overlay of a geostrategic relationship with Russia on many fronts. He wants to reestablish those relationships, which up until now had all been predicated upon the whole Ukrainian nonsense, and to this day nobody can explain to me what the national security imperative was of the U.S. getting involved there in the first place. Europeans are on a different scale. They're looking for relevance in light of what they're seeing of Trump and Putin trying to work out and renewing relationships. And this has. I was talking to an Iranian colleague yesterday, and it also there's a lot of trepidation about negotiations in the Iranian sphere, at the same time as you see trepidation and the issue of trust between Russia and the United States. Nobody trusts the United States. That's what seems to be emerging, and for good reason. They're very, and especially now with Trump, who's taking this initiative to open up relations. Yeah, he's being bombastic. Well, if you don't talk to us, we're going to bomb you. Well, he did that with North Korea, and we saw what happened there. They all kissed and made up for a time. But Trump does not. Trump can neither afford nor wants a war with Iran. At the same time, he's going ahead with relations with Russia. It's a slow, tedious process because you have to regain trust. And that is the major monumental issue right now. And while Trump can complain, well, the Russians are still bombing the Ukrainians. Well, there's no ceasefire except a limited one on energy resources. And the Ukrainians have been violating that like crazy, and the Russians have withheld, and yet at the same time the Russians have complained to Washington about that, to say, look, we're not breaking that agreement. It was a very limited one. It was a test to see, the sincerity of Kiev and Russia in wanting to negotiate. Kiev has been violating it like crazy. And at the same time, you have Trump saying, okay, but he still wants to meet, and he's now, as you pointed out, trying to undertake certain relaxation of sanctions. We had a release of an American Russian dual citizen just this morning that worked out, and that's another sign of progress. It didn't have to happen. This was the ballerina, and who paid $50, I guess, to a Ukrainian charity, and which the Russians said was treason.
That's a no-no. Yeah, that's a no-no.
Yeah. Don't do that. Yeah. But we're seeing signs, and I think it's going to take time. It's not going to be the 24-hour nonsense. It's taking time. It's that element of trust and developing a level of confidence. And I think that's going to be the overarching geostrategic interest of the United States, as opposed to just Ukraine. Although trying to settle Ukraine is going to be a major part of moving forward progress in that relationship with Russia, because the United States has major strategic interests with Russia, which Ukraine is virtually insignificant, and it's a troubled area. And the Europeans, however, continue to want war. Trump does not have control any longer over his allies. And I think at this point, he's probably figuring it doesn't matter if after I've settled something with Russia and the Europeans still want to do their thing, the United States is not going to engage in yet another suicidal experience on behalf of the Europeans, because that's been the history of their existence for the last 500 years. They just don't know how to save themselves. In the 20th century, they needed the United States twice.
The
And
delusion.
and it go and we're seeing a pattern of behavior. We now have a history of experiences that we can see the trend, and the United States needs to wake up and tell the Europeans, if you continue on this route, you're going to put yourself into trouble, and economically they're in deep trouble. They wouldn't be able to muster enough resources to undertake a continuing war with Russia. Russia will swamp them if they undertake if they go on their own, and I think the people of Europe realize that, as opposed to their elitist leaders. You're seeing the beginning of the end of globalization that they try to foist up by the neoliberals on us, and that's coming to a quick end. And I think it's the beginning of end of NATO, and I think it's time, because we've moved on from the war in the 20th century. We got to move on and undertake new relationships. We're seeing China. It has its own issues right now with the United States on the trade issue, and it's trying to muster the BRICS countries and the global South now to stand up and deal with it, because right now China, the United States, has been its primary customer for all of its goods, and they have all these manufactured items, and they have an industry and people they've got to keep content, but they don't have alternative industries. Europe cannot afford it. Europe doesn't want Chinese stuff because of the quality. Quality is, and also China will undercut, as they have the United States industries, and all of their industries are government supported. Well, that over time that begins to have show wear and tear on the ability of a country to move on economically. They are an exporting country. They cannot afford. The Chinese cannot afford, nor can the Russians, a war of Iran being at war, because of the importance, the geostrategic and geopolitical location of Iran for its north, south, east, west corridor, for its economic future, BRICS, Belt and Road. That's all important to Russia and China. So everything, it tends to be related, and then you got to figure where does Netanyahu fit in all this. Some people feel he's got some kind of hypnotic trance over Trump.
Trump, right?
It's unbelievable. But all is not cozy in that relationship either, by the way.
I'm glad that you mentioned Netanyahu. So after he, dragged his criminal ass to Washington, and Donald Trump, I mean, mind you, just murdered a 14-year-old American.
Yeah.
You just had the execution of those aid workers where their arms were tied behind their back, buried after being executed, dumped into a shallow grave with a truck, an ambulance buried on top of them. Netanyahu is welcomed into the White House as if nothing is going on. After the meeting with Trump, he comes out and says this. Now, I'm not going to play it because it's not in English. But what he's saying here effectively is, well, I had a conversation with Trump. The conversation went well, and we decided that the Libyan option may be the best option for Iran. Now, anybody that knows anything, when you hear the term Libyan option, it is explosive. I remember when they said that about Kim Jong-un, and he flipped out. He lost his mind. Because what they're talking about is effectively Gaddafi being sodomized with machete and murdered, with Hillary Clinton cackling. We saw, he died, meaning we sent the jihadists in there that initiated all of this stuff. Iran, when you say that the U.S. is not to be trusted, I think back to Wesley Clark. 5 nations in 7 years? Iran being the last nation. And if you think about it, through multiple presidents, they've had a successive or coherent strategy where they've taken out one government after the next, after the next, and now they're landing on Iran. And the idea that I'm going to negotiate when ultimately I know that at the end of the day, you're trying to have my destruction in your mind seems to be outlandish. Now, I can imagine that the Russians are saying, negotiate, talk to them. If you can avoid some larger thing, do so, because we don't want a war. And hence, you get the Oman conversations that are going to take place over the weekend. But I keep thinking to myself, what Trump is probably going to want, especially taking this maximalist demanding thing of, we're going to bomb you if we don't get what we want. Okay, well, if you accept that premise, you can ask for anything, right? We want the ballistic missiles. We want your nuclear things. Hey, we want your scientist's head on the pipe. You can ask
That's
for
his
anything.
that's his bombastic approach to get attention. That's how you grab them by the short and curlies to grab their attention and control the narrative. Then
But
they
it's also to
negotiate.
control the negotiations. If,
Well, he wants to
if you
control.
believe that you're under threat in a negotiation, you give me more than what I would typically take. It's a bullying tactic.
Sure it is. And that's how he's always operated when he used to do his real estate stuff. And being a typical New Yorker, that's just their style. Now, most people are not accustomed to that. However, I think with Iran, it's going to take the help of Russia for this reason. Trump has never distinguished between Iran's legitimate nuclear reactor development capabilities versus making a bomb. There are two fatwas against making them. And the intelligence community to this day still assesses that they never resumed that weapons development program, even though they have cycled up enriched uranium up to 60%.
Mhm.
And, they passed a certain threshold, but there's also legitimate medical reasons to have 60% for advanced cancer research and medical purposes. So there is a legitimate purpose for 60%, which is not indigenous to to Iran. They have people who need advanced medical treatment for cancer, for example, have to go abroad to get that, Switzerland or France. They don't have it indigenously. Now, I think if Russia makes a presence makes a guarantee to the United States that their presence in building these reactors, and they will oversee, and the Russians and Putin himself has said, we do not want Iran to have a nuclear weapon either. But I think as long as there is a Russian presence in Iran, that will help oversee any weapons development or give some assurance, in addition to trying to bring in more international IAEA coverage to ensure against that. But there's got to be a distinction between legitimate nuclear development programs, which Iran is entitled to do as a nation state. They are a signatory to the NPT.
Michael, I find this conversation to be outrageous, and I'm going to tell you why.
Please.
Israel has gone on a murder spree
Sure.
all across the Middle East, Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, West Bank. They have killed indiscriminately women, children. They've raped. They've destroyed hospitals. They've destroyed tents. They've blown up apartment buildings to get like one person, killing hundreds within the context of the process. 50,000 to 100,000 people are wiped off the face of the earth, and they are still on a killing spree. They have an open air ghetto, and on top of that, I guess my point is, and they have nukes.
Yes.
Iran hasn't invaded anybody. And we're having this conversation as if Iran is the problem. Iran has every right to develop nuclear, to their heart's content. And the notion that Netanyahu is complaining for 30 years that Iran is getting a bomb. And as you point out,
this is one other aspect that I think needs to be brought out. Israel, and I think Trump needs to force this. There has to be an open admission to the fact that Israel has nuclear weapons. And that needs to be publicized. And their nuclear weapons need to be kicked out of the Middle East altogether. Make the Middle East a nuclear weapons free zone. And the only way you do it, you see, for years, previous administrations have basically ignored that. That needs to be now brought out, and for transparency reasons. Trump needs to push that, and the Iranians need to broadcast that loud and clear as a condition, and get Israel to start denuclearizing on its own in order to ensure safety. But at the same time, you got to have both countries agree, both Iran and Israel agree, that they're not out to destroy each other. Now, I haven't seen evidence where Israel or where Iran has said they want to destroy Israel, but even though they claim there's claims to that effect, but I've never seen it in writing. But
No.
the reality is that there's, I think with outside with Russian and U.S. Involvement in trying to work out a resolution. Look, the Israelis can go ahead and they have and kill innocent people who are defenseless. Iran is not.
Right.
Iran's a different story. And now they may try to do to the Iranian leadership what they did to the Hezbollah and Hamas leadership, and with the hope of trying to cripple and promote regime change that way to get people to rise up. But the experience with Iran has been that it's shown the Iranian people have shown resistance. They may not like the government so much, but they do like their supreme leader. Mm-hmm. There's a difference, and consequently, we have to understand that from a cultural perspective, from the Western perspective.
But you say that as if fairness is the objective. Fairness has never been the objective.
I'm looking for ideas on how to resolve a lingering problem,
and by the
no
way,
one's come up with any.
I totally accept that. But the reason no one has come up with any is because the issue is about power, not fairness, not ethics, not morality, not what's right. Their thing is, we want to take this territory, so we're taking it.
Well, we've gone up to a certain precipice, and if we go beyond that precipice now, we're going to have regional war. Mm-hmm. And it's going to bring in the Chinese and the Russians. I think it will have to. And we got to avoid that.
Get involved. See, and that's a fact, and I'm glad you bring that up. You're reading my mind. So right here is the new partnership that the Russian State Duma ratified. Do you think this is coincidental that this is being ratified now?
No, it's nothing is happenstance. It's meant to send a message. Now, I don't know that partnership necessarily implies coming to, like an Article 5 of NATO, an attack on will automatic. I don't think it encompasses that. Mm-mm. No, but it does provide for other assurances. And the Iranians can get defensive weapons if they want from the Russians, and I think that's they've already started. So, but at the same time, Russia is sending a message to Trump that this is strategically important for us, and just as your relationship with us is important to you. So I think that that there's got to be a compromise here, and the Netanyahus and the Zelenskys have got to be put in a little box on the side and contained, and told be a good boys. And while greater geostrategic efforts are undertaken to try and maintain a peace, and I think that's Trump still boasts of his friendship with Xi Jinping, even though they're undergoing this temporary trade war, which will simmer down. It'll simmer down. But it will simmer down. And that's an issue in and of itself. They can only go so far before the Chinese economy begins to really feel it. But they also realize, but China has got to realize that it only has so many equities, and it's produced all of this stuff that most other countries may not want. But there has to be some trade equity brought in because of this disparity that we've seen in trade for years by these countries, and including Europe. So there's a variety of things going on here at the same time, and it all seems to be interconnected.
But they've decided to. Well, okay, two things. In this treaty, the treaty also promotes investment in oil and gas development, joint long-term projects, and peaceful nuclear energy. The
There you
creation
go.
of a payment system, independent third parties, and national currencies. When I saw nuclear energy, I was like, oh, okay. That's interesting.
That's what I'm talking about. That's where I think the Russians can be helpful in coming to a resolution on and try to simmer down this confrontation that appears to be the case right now. But Trump did say, look, they've got time. We've got time. We're just yesterday, he said, we're working on it. It's going to take time. He that's an admission on his part. He's not going to go bomb them tomorrow, but I don't think he's going to bomb them at all. But I think it is a way to get the conversation going and to upgrade it. And I don't know that Netanyahu is all in favor of that.
I know, but Iran is not a threat to us.
No, it's not. It's a threat to Netanyahu. But we've always looked at Iran through the prism of Israel. I mean, ever since I was at the Pentagon. You mentioned General Clark. I had people I was working with at the Pentagon who told me that Baghdad was going to be the hub for regime change in all these countries, including Tehran, Damascus, even Saudi Arabia at that time. All in Libya when it was still under Gaddafi. All these countries that at that time were against Israel. So that policy has not changed.
You must understand, this is very frustrating to me because from my point of view, it's an outrageous conversation. Like the idea is that like Israel has nukes unacknowledged and they are a fascist, insane state. And yet we're looking at Iran saying, yeah, seems like you need to be tested, you need to be checked, you need to be inspected. It's like, but that's the conversation, right? That's the lens.
But what I'm saying is that Iran and the United States need to acknowledge that now. They need to publicly, and there needs to be an effort made to get Israel to denuclearize its weapons.
Do you think there's a deal to be made here? And if so, what would that deal be?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think a deal can be made. Yeah. I mean, you can make a deal out of anything. Again, I think it's going to take the assistance of Russia to help us out on the nuclear reactor side. If there's a Russian presence, I think that should give some, because they have openly said, we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon either. Even though Iran has said they have fatwas against it. We need to get them to continue honoring that, and also bring in the IAEA to allow for assurances. To what extent that you see nobody trusts anybody right now. That's the problem. So there's got to be a period where you rekindle that element of trust, and it right now it just doesn't exist.
Michael Maloof, he is former senior security policy analyst in the Office of Secretary of Defense, author, and regular contributing analyst on RT and other media outlets. He has nearly 30 years of federal service experience in the U.S. Department of Defense and a damn good friend of this show. Great spot, Michael. I really appreciate it.
Well, I hope you're not frustrated with me, but with the situation.
I'm not frustrated with you at all. I love you to bits. I really appreciate you coming in. It's the situation that frustrates me because I keep the conversation is often put through this lens of, well, Iran needs to do so-and-so. And it's like, what do you mean Iran needs to do so-and-so? They haven't invaded anybody.
I agree.
You look at this other person, it's like, okay, but the lens, as you pointed out, this is always looked through the lens of Israel. Okay, well, I'm an American. I don't live over there. And more to the point, between the two, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things is very problematic in the way that it operates. And yet, there's all of this focus on the other. And to me, it comes down to where the United States, we get to dictate outcomes. And I think that's outrageous.
Well, let's see what comes out of these meetings. The fact that they're meeting is important, and it's a good thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good thing. As long as they're talking, they're not shooting at each other, and that's what's important. And but I think there needs to be an education on the part of the United States. There needs to be they need to hear the Iranian perspective, and hear from there's two sides to every story here, and that needs to be brought in. Plus, you have these other elements that also come into play that need to be taken into account. So this is not operating in a vacuum. This also encompasses what the Chinese and the Russians want. And I think that's why it's important for Russia and the United States to get their strategic act together and renew the relationship so they can work together. And I think that's evolving now, that we're heading in the right direction. But
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah.
Michael Maloof, thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it.
See you later.
You be safe. All right. Another guest on fire. Michael Maloof is fantastic today. And we are going to follow that up with a great friend of the show, somebody who I have watched and admired for a very, 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 very long time, Professor Richard Wolff. He is Professor of Economics Emeritus in the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a visiting professor in the graduate program of International Affairs for the New School University in New York City. He is founder of Democracy at Work, host of their nationally syndicated show, Economics Update. His latest book, well, it may not be the latest at this point, but one of his books, The System is the Sickness When Capitalism Fails to Save Us from Pandemics or Itself. And it is available with other books such as Understanding Socialism, Understanding Marxism at www.democracyatwork.info. Professor Wolff, my man, welcome to the show. How you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing real well. I hope the same for you.
I'm making it. I had a bit of a fall, but I'm making it. I'm mustering through, especially getting an opportunity to talk to you, and especially at a time like this. I have to start at the tariff war. A U.S. president decides, I am going to change the global order on my own. And the world has been taking advantage of us. We are no longer going to be the whipping post of the world. And as such, I am going to effectively wage a one-man economic war. And comes out with a ridiculous document that in no way corresponds to the tariffs of other countries, but is some amalgam of, let's say, imports versus trade deficit merged together. This goes on for a while. China says, we're not taking a backseat to you. And it ends up having this tariff war, almost like a personal war between China and the United States by itself, where now Chinese tariffs, Russia, the tariffs on China are like 125%, and China's tariffs are up to 83%. Trump, after seeing the bond market flip out and fundamentally crash, backed out on the other tariffs with bringing everything down to 10%, with the exception of China, where these two are going at it. That is an overview. Please give me your take. Please give me your take. I find this to be completely outrageous, but you may have a better explanation of what's going on.
All right. Let me start with the big picture and then focus in more on the details. Here's the big picture. The United States empire, the one that has been basically the rule for most of the last century, when the British Empire, the one before us, faded out. 100 years ago, the global currency was the pound sterling, not the dollar. Britain was everywhere. Remember, Britain owned South Africa, it owned India, it owned, just in every continent. The British love to tell themselves the sun never sets on the British Empire, because as the sun goes down on one part of it, it's coming up on the other part of it, which was true. They had a real empire. Those were the good old days that Mr. Trump seems to want to go back to with MAGA, go back, when it was great. back then, the British Empire was in decline and the American Empire was rising. You could see it particularly at the time of the presidency of Mr. McKinley, who Mr. Trump seems to admire, even though the rest of the world had long ago forgotten him. But that was the 1890s, the end of the British Empire. World War I finished them off, but in comes the American Empire, and like every empire, the Roman, the Greek, the Persian, the Ottoman, and whatever you want, it has an upturn, and then it peaks, and then it goes down. That's why we don't have the Roman Empire anymore, or the Greek, or the British, or the Persian. The United States had to know, unless it was really crazy as a place, which I don't think it was, they had to know that the up would turn into the down. And so the question wasn't whether, it was only when. But, hope and self-delusion springs eternal. And the American Empire, which peaked and started going down about 15, 20 years ago, that the reaction of most Americans has been denial. What are you talking about? I mean, even look at the race for president. Trump last November. Trump on the one hand, Biden, then Kamala Harris on the other. Do any of them talk about the declining of American empire? Not a word. It's like, it's like one of those taboo subjects, religion, sex, or something else that you can't talk about because it's too hush-hush. It's too something you just polite, nice people don't talk about. Well, after a while, these things that you're not allowed to talk about, they bubble up. They force themselves on you, right? You don't talk. I don't want to get into the wrong area here with you. If you don't talk about sex, it's going to come up and bite you because it's part of life, man, and it's going to make its demands on you like it does on everybody else.
Professor Wolf, you can talk about sex if you need to. That's fine.
Thank you. I'll remember that. You made me sorry. I'll remember that. So anyway, the empire is dying, and let me give you just a few examples of the things that show that to the whole world. One, we lost the war in Vietnam, we lost the war in Iraq, we lost the war in Afghanistan, and we're in the process of losing the war in Ukraine. Those are the last 4 wars we've had, and we've lost every one of them. And in each of those wars, it was the United States, the most militarily powerful country in the world, against some of the poorest countries on this planet. And we lost. The Communist Party of Vietnam is in charge of that country. That was the enemy then. The Taliban is in charge of Afghanistan. That was the enemy then. And I could keep going. That's one thing. Second thing, we long ago stopped being able to make enough money to turn it around and give us the lifestyle we want as a people. So our government had to do what? Borrow. It had to mortgage the future. Our government now is in the greatest degree of debt it has ever been. Right? Number 2, our corporations are in the greatest level of debt they have ever been. And our households, if you add up mortgage debt, automobile debt, credit card debt, and student debt, we're loaded up with debt in a way we never have before. Okay, that's a sign that your economy is in difficulty. And yeah, the Bushes pretended it wasn't there. The Clintons pretended it wasn't there. Obama pretended it wasn't there. Biden pretended it. Mr. Trump, of whom I'm no fan, as you can imagine, but Mr. Trump does get the credit for at least realizing, oh my goodness, we are in deep doo-doo here. We are in trouble. We have so many debts that there's a serious danger that the world, which has been lending money to the United States for 40 years, isn't going to lend anymore because we're too risky a debtor. We're too high up in our debt. we're gonna reach a point where the American people are gonna say, you're not gonna pay off your debt. You're gonna make sure that my kid can go to school, that my bus runs on time, and that's what you're gonna have to use the money for, not to pay off the rich people who lent to you. That's what always happens when you do. So here's the plan, insofar as he has a plan. I am going to make the rest of the world pay us to help us get out of the hole we dug ourselves into. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to blame them. That's why you get this weird story. Everyone knows, and I start with myself, born in America, lived here all my life, worked here all my life, living and working in New York City as I speak to you, etc., etc. The United States has been the dominant country in the last 40 years. What are you talking about? You got cheated. This is, you know what this is called by psychologists? Paranoia. The whole world's out to get me, and they've been cheating me for 40. What are you talking about? There's a reason why you're so rich, because you've been able to rip off much of the rest of the world. You're the one who has 700 military bases around the world. Nobody else has that. What are you talking about? But in the crazy idea of Mr. Trump and his associates, they've come up with an idea. Blame the rest of the world for the difficulties we're in. Blame them. It's like blaming China for being a successful economic powerhouse. One of the reasons China did real well, not the only reason, but one of them, is that lots of American, British, Japanese, and other corporations moved production to China over the last 30 years. Nobody held a gun to their head. No one made them do that. The Chinese didn't make them do that. They did it. They did it because it's profitable. They made the decision to close the factory in Chicago or St. Louis or Philadelphia and move it to Shanghai or Beijing or wherever they put it there. And they did it because the wages were lower there and they could make more money. So it was a profitable deal. They brought the profits back here. That's why we've had a stock market boom basically since the 1980s. The whining, you cheated us, is childish nonsense. Nobody should be fooled. What's going on here is, by tariff, they hope, I believe they're wrong, but we'll see. They hope that the rest of the world will be forced, by adjusting to these tariffs, to give us a big load of money. Here's how it works. You're a Chinese company and you make elegant blue men's jackets like the one you're wearing. And let's say it costs, just for the sake of argument, $500. So you ship it to the United States, you get your $500 for it. Well, now if there's a 10% tariff, well, if you want to buy it, you're going to have to pay $500 to go to China for the jacket, plus $50, 10%, go to Uncle Sam. Okay, here's what they hope will happen. The Chinese will say, oh my God, nobody will buy the jacket for $550. We cannot go above $500. So here's what we're going to do. That we're going to tell the American wholesaler, we'll give you the jacket for $450. You then, Americans will pay the $50 to Uncle Sam, but it'll still be only $500 out of their pocket, $450 for the jacket, $50 for Uncle Sam. And you know what this means? You're screwing the jacket company in China, and you're building up revenue for Uncle Sam. And he's going to use that to dig us out of the hole he dug us into. But that only works if the rest of the world says, we will absorb it this way. We will cut our... He's hurting every country in order to save the United States. The countries around the world hate this for obvious reasons. They are hurt, and they're being hurt to help the richest country on earth. I love that one of the heaviest countries tariffed was Lesotho. By the way, they can't even pronounce it right. You know, a country in southern part of Africa, Lesotho, one of the poorer countries on this planet, is being hit with a tariff. I don't remember the number, but 30 or 40% neighborhood. Unbelievable. You're going to whack these poor countries to help a super rich country get out of its own dilemma this is not going to work. Even if temporarily some countries do it. People in each country now, and Jamal, in a way, this may be the most important long-term effect. In every country that you pinch in this way, there's going to be bitterness and anger. If I'm the blue jacket maker in China,
oh, you can feel something.
And the government comes down on me and says, you got to cut the price so that we can hold on to the Why do I have to do that? Says whoever the Chinese owner of the factory there is. And the answer will be because of Trump. Every leader in the world, think about it, is now going to excuse whatever bad things they did. For every problem in every country, there's going to be one explanation. Trump. You know, in other words, what he's doing, trying to blame the rest of the world for our problems, they're going to turn around and do exactly back to him. Only when he says it, it's BS. And when they say it, it'll have more than a grain of truth to it. That's a very bad situation for the United States. That's going to come back and haunt us. It already does. Countries around the world see the United States as doing something no other country has done. Mr. Trump just assaulted the whole world.
Yes.
Declared a trade. I'm going to whack you and you and you and you, and you can all come here and beg for me to relieve this, but you're going to have to give me something valuable so I can get out of the hole I'm in. You know, they won't say it to his face, but in every government office, they are angry, they are laughing at him, and they're going to turn this around. They're not going to be ripped off by this in order to be blamed for the difficulties of one of the richest countries on earth. I mean, this is so weird and wild that even in America, gullible as we all are, this ain't not going to fly. I mean, it's just not going to fly.
Well, it apparently didn't. The day before, I think it was Monday, Trump said, these are never going away. These are eternal.
Right.
And then the day later, he walks them back because apparently the bond market freaked out. In fact, to back up your point, Donald Trump was giving a speech and he came on and said this.
In the history of our country. And don't let some of these politicians go around saying, you know, because I'm telling you, these countries are calling us up, kissing my ass. They are dying to make a deal. Please, sir, make a deal. I'll do anything. I'll do anything, sir. And then I'll see some rebel.
Can you imagine a world leader going out and saying that other world leaders are calling him and kissing his ass? Yeah. And you're sitting in your office listening and watching that? That is outrageous.
Yes.
The bond markets, can you explain to the audience what is the bond market and why is it relevant in the context of treasuries? Because what changed that, bravado was that treasuries were being sold by countries and they were not being bought when they went out for another auction. And at that point they said, oh my God, this is catastrophic. And they freaked out. What is the bond market and why did he freak out as he watched that process take place?
The bond market is literally a market where people buy and sell debts. Here's what that means. If a company borrows money in the market, it issues a piece of paper. It's like an IOU. This is worth $1 million, and if you give us $1 million, this piece of paper means that we will pay you back, say 5 years from now, and pay you so much interest each year between now and the time we pay you back. And so the company gets the $1 million, you get the piece of paper, you're the creditor, the company is the debtor, and it's a transaction like that. The government does the same thing. when the government spends more money than it takes in taxes. And for example, the projection right now for 2025 is $2 trillion of spending by the American government ahead of the revenue expected by the American government. It is the job of the U.S. Treasury, that part of the government, to borrow the money to enable the government to spend more than it takes in taxes. The government can only spend what it gets in taxes. If it wants to spend more, it has to borrow it. So what it does is it goes into what's called the bond market, which is where anybody interested in lending to the government says, okay, I will give you X million or X billion these days, and you give me a piece of paper that's an IOU. And the United States now has $35 trillion of debt. The United States is the most indebted country on this planet. Nobody else is close. And the two biggest foreign creditors, because the government doesn't care who it borrows from. It can borrow from you, Jamarl. It can borrow from me. And there are private people wealthier than I am and wealthier than you are who keep a portion of their wealth in debt of the U.S. government because it's reputed to be, or it used to be reputed to be, the safest investment you can make. So you have no risk, and the government pays you these days, I don't know, about 3 or 4% per year while you wait to get paid back. So for rich people, they do it, but foreign governments and foreign people can also lend to the United States government. The two biggest creditors of the U.S. government are Japan and China. Talk about the U.S. and China. China is one of the biggest creditors in the world, and the United States is the biggest debtor. Hello, that tells you quite a bit there too, you know. So here's the game. The world looked at what Mr. Trump was doing and made the conclusion the United States is desperate, which is a correct conclusion. Why would you do? What kind of government attacks the whole world with a trade war? I mean, wow, you could. They throw away the BS about we've been cheated. No one takes that seriously. What it means is you're in deep doo-doo if you have to do that, which is true. And so the rest of the world goes, we're not lending you more money because you're in too much trouble. It's like your local bank. If they see you cashing in your beautiful big automobile for a horse, they're not going to lend you money because they tell that you're not in a good position, because nobody trades in their Cadillac for a horse, right? Unless they're in a lot of trouble, right? So the bond market on Monday said, we're not buying treasury. We are unloading treasuries. When you unload treasuries, it's an unmistakable sign that when the people who own those bonds are selling them, they don't trust to be a creditor of the U.S. because the U.S. is in too much trouble.
Wow.
Mr. Trump understood. His advisors, no doubt, told him, if this goes on, even if it just goes on for a few days, you're going to look like a loser. And the one way to change Mr. Trump's mind on a dime is to tell him what you're doing is going to make you and your country look like. So to prevent that, he did. But look at what he's doing. As you pointed out, Jamal, correctly. One day he says it's forever. The next day it's over. That's not the behavior of someone who's in charge. That's the behavior of someone who's hysterical with worry. And it's a herky-jerky, on again, off again. I don't mean to be the bearer of troubling news, but you run an honest program, and that's why you have me here, and that's why I'm telling you, this country is on the down. It's losing its empire. That, in turn, is undercutting its domestic economy. It is getting desperate. I'll show you another sign of desperation. Wholesale firing of thousands of federal employees overnight. That has nothing, nobody interested in efficiency would ever do that. I'll give you an example. When a company thinks it can be more efficient than it is, It calls in efficiency experts. There are lots of companies that do that. They have occasionally, because they usually make a team, a couple of lawyers, technical people, an accountant, and an economist like me. We become part of a team. We go in, we examine the company and how it works, and then we write a report. Here are the ways we think you can become more efficient.
Right.
Nobody goes in, fire 10,000 people. That's not efficient. That's desperate, man. That's when you are no longer able to be careful. You're no longer able, you're worried about whether you can be there tomorrow. That's what's going on here. These are acts collectively put together of desperation. And if we have, as more and more people are now suggesting we may very well may, a recession this year, more lately last year, next year, I really tell you, I don't know what's going. This is too many problems converging on us at the same time. It's like in your personal life. You can take a hit on this part of your life. You can take a hit on that one. If you're taking 4 hits at the same time, it's too much. It's too much.
Capitulate.
And
Stagflation, is that a potential risk in this one? I think
yes.
it was. Okay.
Yes. See, here's stagflation is putting together 2 words: stagnation, your economy isn't growing, and inflation, your prices are going up. When you have the 2 together, they combine the words, a new word, stagflation. Here's the problem. Tariffs make everything that comes in from outside more expensive. All right, well, give you an example. A lot of our energy, not all of it, but a lot of it comes in from outside. Mm-hmm. Well, if the cost of oil and gas or electricity comes in from outside, I'll give you a concrete example. The Midwest of the United States gets a lot of its electricity from Canada. If Mr. Trump means it, and he has kept in place the 25% tariff against Canadian exports that come here, well, that means the cost of the electricity in the Midwest is going to go up. And that means everybody who uses electricity, every factory, every office, every store, up go their prices to recover the fact that they have to pay more for electricity. So, yeah, we're going to have an inflation. Meanwhile, if no businesses can figure out where to invest because the tariffs are up in the air, and by the way, delaying it for 90 days only makes matters worse, because we're not going to know now for May, June, and July. We're talking into the summer. We're not going to know what tariffs are going where. Every business thinking about investing is going to say, wait, we have to wait to see what this crazy president does or doesn't do. So you might have a recession because businesses are not investing. At the same time that the tariffs raise the price, then you have stagnation and inflation, and that's called stagflation. Look, Mr. Trump has had a meteoric rise, a guy with no background in politics. He was a New York real estate playboy most of his life. So now he suddenly shoots into politics, but there's a nasty pattern in history. The people who shoot up fast shoot down fast too. And you may see, if he continues on the road he is on, man is going to explode. And his career is going to go as fast down as it went up. And we're all going to wonder what that was that blew by so fast.
Last question. He is boasting that he has $20 gazillion in investment that is coming back into the United States. And I'm being hyperbolic. I think he said like 5 trillion or something like that. He is trying to drag jobs back into America with this idea that Americans are going to pay higher prices. He accepts that they're going to pay higher prices. He doesn't seem to care about it. His thought is, well, buy American and you will get more American companies. With the level of volatility that he's instilling in this, the fact that he's only been in office for 3 years, is this going to work? And better question, There are some people in this audience that actually believe he is fighting for workers.
Yes.
That this could be the last question. Is this really fighting for the working class?
No, this is a concerted effort to screw the working class. Let me explain. First, on the bringing the jobs here.
Mhm.
Every president, both of the Bushes, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Biden, every one of the last, I don't know, 8 or 9 presidents has promised in the campaign for the presidency and once they got in to bring back manufacturing. Every president promised it. No president delivered on that promise. I can show you the percentage of the American economy that's manufacturing is a line that goes down, 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 down. Mr. Trump is promising the same thing. My guess is it won't work. Now, I'll give Mr. Trump, he's much more extreme in what he's doing to try to get that done.
Yeah.
But there's a reason all the others failed. They also tried in various ways, but it didn't work. And I'll tell you why it won't work now, right? Number one, the reason we don't have the jobs hasn't changed. Wages in other parts of the world remain much lower than they are here. Not as much, particularly not in China. But still, in other countries, Vietnam, Bangladesh, I could go on, the wages are still much lower. Number two, the market outside the United States is bigger and growing faster than the market inside. And I can tell you, in every business school in this country, and I have taught at some, when you teach young people who go into business, you basically teach them, you want to be successful in business, you go to where the wages are low and the market is growing. Okay? Businesses do that. And they're not in the United States because this is not where the wages are low and this is not where the economy is booming and growing. For the last 40 years, the economy of China has grown much faster than the US. Let me give you the numbers from the International Monetary Fund for the last year, 2024. The United States grew 2.8%. China grew 5%. Okay, conversation over. And that's typical. They 2 to 3 times faster. That's why they've caught up to us. That's why they're in the process of surpassing us. And that's because the wages are cheaper and the market is growing there. And so businesses go there. And if the American businesses don't do that, they come back here where the wages are higher and the growth is lower, you know what's going to happen to them? They're going to be outcompeted by all the French and German and Japanese and Chinese enterprises that are not coming here, who will be competing with them with the lower wages and the better market. And any honest American businessman will tell you that. So this is not going to work. It just isn't. The chances of it very, very low. They may not be zero, but they are very, very low. Now, why is it an attack on the working class? Well, first of all, it's obviously an attack when you fire hundreds of thousands of federal employees. That's an attack. That's first of all, an attack on them. They've lost their jobs. They've lost whatever level of career advancement they were able to achieve. They've lost their income. That plunges their family into problems. It plunges, it's awful. But people have to think, where are all those unemployed people going to go? They're going to go into the private sector. It's the only place to go and find a job. And how are they going to get a job there? By offering to work for less money than the people who have those private sector jobs now. This is going to hurt the whole working class. Meanwhile, they're going to have to pay more prices because of the tariffs. You're hitting them with a you're hitting them with a 1-2 punch. This is terrible for the working class. And around the world, the people who see it are asking themselves everywhere one big question. How long will the American working class take it? How long will they sit there and absorb it? And I don't mind adding, it's particularly true for Black and brown Americans because they're going to be hurt more than white people, as they usually are in these situations. Look, the federal government was one of the few places that made affirmative action real. The percentage of Black and brown people working for the federal government is larger than the percentage of Black and brown people in the population. That's not true anywhere else. So if you savage the federal jobs, you're particularly hurting Black and brown people. Let me give you an example of how outrageous this is. In 1944, there was something called, a bill was passed, signed by the president, called Veterans Preference Act. That bill is still the law of this country. And here's what the bill says. Given that we are fighting World War II and the country is being protected by the men and women of the armed forces, blah, 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 all that, they are to be given preference. If you hire more veterans to show that we care about our veterans.
Oh, I
If
see.
and when you have to lay off people, lay the veterans off last. Well, if you use modern language, this was a bill to give affirmative action to veterans. Okay, you know what that means? That right now, 30% of public employees are veterans, which means the people being fired are veterans. Half of them are disabled. What kind of a government does this? In the name of efficiency, you're savaging your own veterans. I go back to the first thing I said to you, Jamal. We are watching a desperate government try to salvage a desperate situation. When empires go down, at least the past teaches us this, when empires go down, the people at the top, the richest and the most powerful, use their positions to hold on to the wealth they accumulated as long as they can. And that means the cost of the declining empire, the pain of the declining empire gets offloaded from them onto the rest of us. That's what you are watching.
Professor Wolf, you are fantastic. You are utterly fantastic. And I've told you before, I followed you for a very long time. You've been one of those people who've shaped my workable point of view, and I want to thank you for it. Professor Richard Wolf, he's professor of economics emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and a visiting professor of the graduate program for international affairs of the New School University in New York City. He's founder of Democracy at Work and host of their nationally syndicated show, Economic Update. That show is fantastic. His latest book, and I don't know if this is latest. In fact, I would just ask you, what is your latest book, by the way?
It's called Understanding Capitalism. It goes together with the earlier volumes, Understanding Socialism and Understanding Marxism. And you can get any or all of them at our website, democracyatwork.info.
Excellent. And where can people find you? I see you on Twitter. I have at Professor Wolf.
Everywhere. I mean, again, the best way to find out everything, go to our website. From there, you can get YouTube, TikTok. We're on them all.
Thank you for this. Always appreciate having you, I swear. And the audience loves you to bits. So
All right.
Thank you for this. You have a good one.
Have a good day, man.
Thank you. You too. All right. We have had a fantastic show today. We've had a fantastic crowd today. And a fantastic audience. Fantastic across the board. Thank all of you. Let's go to the chats before we close out for today. Wraith 36. Glad you're doing well, brother. Appreciate you. I'm trying, man. I got to be honest. I'm in pain. Like I'm sitting here in pain. the pain medication supposedly works over the course of the day. So I don't know. This, I think, I'm not going to complain. I'm doing fine. I'm doing fine. Wouldn't be a man about it. Just be quiet and, what is it? Quiet and dignified in my taking the pain. You know what's funny? When I was younger, this sounds very stupid, and I'm not sure how many people do this. I used to think, like there's a elegant way to deal with pain, if that makes sense. It's like you must bear it, just bear it like a man, just quiet like a cowboy, and just take it. And I realized somewhere along the way that's so stupid. You deal with pain however you deal with pain. Like, meaning your objective is to get from point A to point B. That's it. Now, obviously, you don't want to humiliate yourself, like falling out of the chair, flipping out like that. That doesn't really help. I remember one time I was in the hospital, and I think I had just had a surgery or something like that, or whatever it was. I was in an excruciating amount of pain. And I wasn't hyperventilating, but I wasn't necessarily taking it all that well. And I remember my doctor came in one day, he says, look, your blood pressure is going through the roof. You need to calm down. You need to chill out. And his point was like, even if you're in pain, you freaking out doesn't make it better. It's like, if you can calm yourself on the sub level, it on some level helps. But to be honest, point A, point B, however you need to do it. However you need to do it. There is no magic to it. There's no elegance to it. It's just dealing with something that hurts and trying to get from point A to point B. I also make a distinction between pain and feeling bad. My mom doesn't. She always, but it's like, if you break a bone, it hurts, but you don't necessarily feel bad. A flu is where you feel bad. Also, before I get to anything else, I would like to give a special shout out to Mama Thomas, and I would like to give a special shout out to my ex. When my phone broke, I didn't know what to do because I can't access anything through the computer. Like, you can't get a taxi through the computer. You can't, all of your information, like any communication device, for the most part, pings back to your phone. And so you could hear your phone go ding, but your screen is smashed to such a degree that you can't even see anything on that screen. It's just lines of color. And you're sitting there like, okay, can't get a cab. I can't even get to the hospital if I needed to get to the hospital. And no, I wasn't going to go to the hospital because it's expensive. And I was bleeding, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna take a shower. And maybe at some point between the time I take that shower and between the time I finish the shower, I'll come up with ideas. Instagram. It ended up being Instagram. Instagram has this ability to make phone calls, and they also have the ability to do video calls. My ex lives on Instagram, lives on it. Like, just it's her home on some level in a way that I don't quite fathom or understand. My mom just so happened to also be on Instagram at the time, and when I sent her a message, she got immediately and called, because if she doesn't see me do the show, she's like, oh my God, what is happening to my child? I don't see him on air. I don't see him on air. But she worked tirelessly to get me that phone. She worked tirelessly. It will be delivered. As for my ex, she had WhatsApp, and she was nice enough to reach out to guests on WhatsApp on my behalf, in which case Arnaud got the message. So I'm giving a special shout out to both of them. My mom specifically, because she had to work yesterday. And God, man, look, I would tell you, I'm one of those people that hate asking anybody for anything. I tend to be a rock, a mountain unto myself. And usually I can figure stuff out. There's random blue moon. even if I need to take radical action, I would do it kind of like I'm playing myself in a game of chess where I am plotting how to get from point A to point B to point C, point D, et cetera, et cetera. That was hard to plot. And they were instrumental, so shout out to both of them. Jabari, VOC Media, Jamal Thomas, so glad you're okay. That's such a freak accident. We need you in the movement and struggle. Glad you're okay. Dude, you telling me. And you think, I remember I was sitting here thinking to myself, like, what the fuck? That's what I just kept thinking, like, what the fuck? And, when stuff like this happens, you think to yourself, how random shit is and how in a split second things turn. Like, at no point did I wake up that morning thinking to myself, I am going to step off of a cliff that I thought was a stair and face plant on a cement or concrete roadway. When does that happen? Like, I've had my phone for the last 20 something years. I've never smashed my phone screen like that. Fallen, yes. I mean, hell, I fell at the clinic like a few days ago. It was wet, raining, and everything else. No injuries or anything like that, just humiliation. But it's just random. Like it's, you think to yourself how random that stuff is. And not just random, like how it happens so fast that there's no compensation for it. Like there's no way for you to, it's not like you're playing chess and you're thinking something through. It's just one thing happens, you make a movement in order to respond to that thing, and fuckery happens. It's just, everything goes haywire. And you're laying there humiliated. Humiliation is the first thing. I'm not even sure which happens first, humiliation or pain. I think as you fall, there's a level of subconscious recognition that something has gone wrong. And in the context of something that's gone wrong, there's humiliation. And then there's immediate just pain. And you're just laying there like, oh, what the fuck? And it takes you a while to register what's actually hurting, if that makes sense. It's like the pain signal doesn't immediately go to your brain. It's just like, something has happened. But it takes a moment for your brain to register. Oh, wait, I'm on the ground. Oh, wait, I just fell. Oh, wait, the cabbie is now coming back. Oh, God, I'm bleeding. Oh, my arm hurt. It's like, it's so wild. It's such a weird thing and random. And that is terrifying. That is terrifying. You can get hit by a bus. You can get hit by a car. You can, a toilet can be thrown out of a space station and you get beamed by it. Like, you think of all the random stuff that happens. I saw a video where a little girl got picked up by an eagle, or an eagle tried to take a little girl away. And you're like, what? How do you can't prepare for that stuff? And then I thought to myself, okay, maybe I should have had a second phone. Maybe I should have put in Google Voice. Maybe I should have, but all of these are afterthoughts of stuff that has never come up before. So it's not something that you ever really thought about before. It's just bizarre. I remember one time, my ex-wife and I were traveling, and we ended up in, because her and I at one point was doing an around the world thing, because we realized it was cheaper to do it that way as opposed to going for a big trip every year. I mean, you got to pay like $1,000 to get out the country. Whereas the moment that you're out the country, you go from place to place to place to place. Some cases you might be paying $50 to take a train from point A to point B. And the moment that you give up your house, car, you give up everything, then you just transfer those expenses onto the trip. You have to pay for somewhere to live anyway. What does it matter? Well, you have to pay for it. You have to pay for transportation. What does it matter? What do you have to pay for? Meaning, either I'm paying a car note, or I'm paying for cabs. Either I'm paying for a house, or I'm paying for an apartment. Most people feel some kind of way about being untethered. as opposed to meaning they want to be fixed. They want to have a place to go back to. They want to have a place on their own. I would like those things too. But at the point where the network went belly up, okay, well, there's the house. At that point, I torched everything in the house, so I trashed it all. And from the standpoint of the car, well, I gave up the Mustang. That was painful. Oh, that was painful. You talking about hurt. I did want to give up that car, to be bluntly honest, but shit, it hurt. Because at that point, it's like, it's real. Like, all right, you are untangling yourself from all of these things. But at the point where you're untangled, you're free, weirdly enough. And okay, whatever you're paying for that, you can pay for something else. Allegory for it. But whatever. We were in Czech Republic, I think. We had just taken a flight. The flight had landed in Czech Republic. And it was something like the next flight or something like that was going to be like either the next day or it was going to be long. And so we were sitting in the airport. This would never happen in America. The guy at the counter said, "Hey, you guys need a ride home? Ride somewhere?" We're like, "Are you sure?" He's like, "Sure, why not?" And the guy at the checkout counter, when we got off work, he literally gave us a ride. That shit only happens in like somewhere in Europe. And we were like in the boonies in Europe, like in it wasn't Prague, it was like the third largest south with I can't think of the name of it. He takes us to our hotel. He drops us off. And her and I are standing out there, it's freezing. And the hotel, for whatever reason, had a gate that was closed and we had no way to access the hotel. Our phones didn't work because we're in a foreign country. And we were just standing out there, stranded. And she looks at me, because usually I have answers. Like, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but usually I can figure shit out. And I look back at her with a completely blank expression like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. Like, that is the only time that I think I've been somewhere where it's like, I don't know what to do. I have no ideas. Because we had no resources. It's like, it's just her and I. There's nobody to call. You have no way to get a cab. You have no way to get to your apartment or hotel. And it's freezing outside. Just so happened they had a bar. And so we went into the bar. And we asked the person, "Hey, can you call us a cab?" Now, this presumes that the person even speaks English, because again, you're in a foreign country. The person did not really speak English. So again, we were kind of stuck. What saved our ass, random day, random thing, God got involved. An Egyptian guy did speak English. Her and I had just went through Egypt like a month or so prior. And he says, "So you've been to Egypt, really?" And we were talking. And the guy goes back in and he says, "We're going to get you a cab." They called us a cab to get us to another hotel. If it wasn't for us going to Egypt, if it wasn't for that guy being there, we were fucked. We were absolutely fucked. Just random stuff. Jabari, VOC Media, Jamal. I think I read this one. Well, shout out to you, Jabari. Thank you for that, man. Social Emotional Learning with Dr. Donnie. I love that name. Oh, I'm sorry you had such a hard. Don't say oh. That sounds so bad. Oh, you got a boo-boo. You got a boo-boo. I'm sorry you had such a hard day yesterday, Jamal. So much appreciated, man. I appreciate you too, Dr. Donnie. Thank you for that. And yeah. What is this? Heel? Dolan Duckett, another And we have Passport 480 Super Sticker. Thank you, Passport. Guys, I appreciate all of you. I really do. And I thank all of you for supporting the content. I thank all of you for your well wishes. It's much appreciated. I really do. You guys make the content what it is. We had a damn good show today. and I need to book for tomorrow. I'm not sure who yet, but we'll see. I want to thank all of you. Method, TCJT, Winstone, welcome back. Well, thank you. I was only gone one day, but I do appreciate it. David Nathan, BRICS versus IMF proxy, Fourth Reich. You know what's funny? If you talk to Mark Frost, he would say that what Donald Trump is doing is on some level putting the screws to BRICS. And his rationale, it's not crazy. His point is, Donald Trump wants to have bilateral trade relationships with all of these countries. And this is a way of trying to force the bilateral trade relationship. And if you do indeed have a bilateral trade relationship, especially if you can get an advantage for America, it, by definition, disadvantages whatever BRICS is coming up with. And if you think about it, think of it like, think of an esoteric space, random space. And let's say within the context of that space, you have 100%. It's the max. If Trump is able to get 51% in that space, then there's only 49% left. And there's this kind of push, pull, tug in regards to what he's trying to get in order to deprive certain BRICS nations of what they're trying to accomplish in the context of BRICS. And who knows what these negotiations will be, who knows what will be in the negotiations, all that stuff. Now, China apparently reached out to various countries, I think even in Europe, and they told China to kick rocks. Oh, no, Australia. China reached out to Australia to see if they can work together in dealing with Trump. Australia told them to kick rocks. Stupid, racist idiots. I've been to Australia. They can be racist as fuck on the issue of China. Now, they wouldn't call it that. In America, we would. They just are more boisterous about the things that they say on their commercials and stuff like that, stuff that we just would never say. There was a commercial I remember where they were talking about, they said, these Chinese people keep coming to Australia and they don't want to learn the language. And then they go to a Chinese person who's like, no English. And it's like, ooh, that's rough. That's rough. That is super rough. Let's see, who else? Vera, Olaf. Oh, I can't pronounce this. Heidi K, see you later. Can you draw a square with 3 lines? Okay, you guys are having an interesting conversation. And by the way, I'm being hyperbolic when I say racist. I do think that Western countries have a way of seeing themselves as being united. That's not insane, right? The British Empire, Britain, Australia, Canada, the United States, etc. We took our freedom with the barrel of a gun, in which case told Britain kick rocks. They burned down the White House at some point in anger. But whatever. I get the sense that they see themselves as being one ultimate collective, even if they have themselves as individual nations, individual states. When they think of themselves and the way they function in the world, they think of themselves almost as one, led by the most powerful of them, which is the United States. So transatlantic relationship, Australia, Canada, etc. Trump is a heretic. Trump is the priest that runs through church screaming, there is no God. And everybody, that's what it seems like. It's strange. It's very strange. Because he's almost treating them like they're colonies. Like, you're taking advantage of us, so I'm going to take something from you now. It's just super weird. Who else is here? Rapunzel, let down your hair. Sensei, shout out to you. Balance Waves, Fei Lu, Cuplex, Jen Ho Choi, Kurt Boss, Roth, Steiner, all of you. Thank you. You have my deepest appreciation. Really do. I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you guys, if not later today, tomorrow morning. Signing off. Be safe all.